time's a charm. Good morning. This is the Health and Homelessness Committee. Today is Friday, February 3rd, 8:30 a.m. We are here for a hearing on a number of bills. We'll jump right into it. Just as a reminder to the audience, we do decision making in all of our hearings till 11:30. So we won't be doing any decisions at the end of this, but we'll be pushing it to 11:30. You're welcome to stay, but you don't have to. You can always watch this on YouTube. And also, this is only the first hearing, so there's going to be many, many more on all of these bills. So up first is House Bill 1300, relating to mental health. We have Mr. Tommy Johnson of the Public Safety. Thank you. Christopher Fernandez, Board of Psychology, comments?
Good morning, Chair. The Board's Legislative Committee wishes to stand on its testimony.
Thank you. DCCA, Ms. Kigogi, comments?
Sorry?
No, DCCA. Hawaii Psychological Association, in support, Mr. Alex Lichten.
Good morning. We're in very strong support of HB 1300 because it would increase the number of mental health providers at a time of a very critical shortage. For example, agencies would then be able to bill supervisor for sessions of trainees. They would have money coming in so that they could afford to take on more trainees. Also, psychologists, for example, in private practice, if passed, they'd be able to bill insurance for the trainees' sessions. Therefore, they could not only afford to pay the trainees, but they would have money to pay for their supervision. It would also diversify the profession. In my case, for example, during the year when I had my doctorate, but needed 1 year of supervised experience to get the full license, I was paid very little money. I was charging groceries on a credit card. My student debt was ballooning, and I would have gone bankrupt except my parents were upper middle class and could afford to help me. People of less means do not have that option, so typically they end up either going to the mainland where half the states have some form of provisional license, or they drop out of the profession. Therefore, the profession is overly represented by more affluent people, people of less means, overrepresented by minorities are less likely to enter the profession. This bill would not lower any standards. The person would still be under supervision while they're getting the necessary experience. And the provisional license expires in 2 years, so one would still have to get licensed to continue practicing. We met last year finally in closing, we met last year with the Board of Psychologists. All the psychologists on the board voted unanimously to support this, so I hope that's reflected in the DCCA testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lichten. Testimony in support from National Association of Social Workers, Hawaii Chapter.
Good morning, Chair Abalati, members of the Health and Homelessness Committee. My name is Becky Gardner here on behalf of the National Association of Social Workers Hawaii Chapter. NSAW Hawaii is very much in support of this measure. You have our written testimony, but I just want to highlight a few main factors about this. We've seen a lot of in the news, there's a severe shortage of mental health providers and tremendous demand, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic. And this measure would promises to bring some immediate relief by all of these postgraduate pre-licensed professionals who have to do their supervised hours anyways. And it's very attractive to them to go to the mainland or, California, state of Washington, where they can get paid for this work. We want to keep that talent, that homegrown talent that is cognizant of the very diverse populations here and their needs. We want to keep them in Hawaii. So this will allow them to stay here, especially with the cost of living. We also just want to draw your attention, there's a couple other measures that relate to the same proposal. We had talked to Representative Nakashima about strengthening the purpose language in this proposal. So I'd urge the committee to look at the purpose language of HB 1242. Of note, that purpose language just makes clear that these associates would not be doing anything they aren't already permitted to do. So there may be some reservation that they're going beyond their scope of practice, but this is something that they need to do anyways to get their license. But we have the added layer of protection of the supervised work, and the insurance reimbursement would be going through their supervising practitioner. Finally, with that purpose language, and also an amendment in HB 1242, there's a clarification that the licensed clinical social workers that supervised social workers, the insurance reimbursement would be going through the supervising social worker. So we just wanted to add that clarification as well. And we're available for questions, and we thank you very much for hearing this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Hawaiian Islands Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, Dr. Souza.
Hi, yes, Becky Gardner, again, on behalf of the Hawaiian Islands Association of Marriage and Family Therapy. Pretty much the same comments. We rest on our written testimony, and again, we're available for questions.
Thank you. Explore Counseling LLC, Mr. Britt Young in support via Zoom. Thank you. Don Kurisu from HMSA.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Vice Chair and members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony. Just want to highlight again that we believe more clarity might be needed to define the circumstances in which one would be eligible for reimbursement for the provisional or associate licensures, and we are available for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Members, we have numerous testimony from individuals, all in support. We also have late testimony from some individuals also in support. Is there anyone here in the audience who would like to speak on behalf? Rather than call the names and waste time on that, I'm going to see if anyone wants to speak in support, if you can come forward. And then if there's anyone in the Zoom room, or to comment on this, either in support or in opposition for House Bill 1300. Please come forward. Anyone in Zoom as well?
Yes, the Zoom person came on just.
Okay, we'll come back to him.
Hi. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Rochelle Rocky, and I'm the Executive Officer for the Marriage and Family Therapist Program, Mental Health Counselor Program, and Social Worker Licensing Program. The department stands on its written testimony offering comments. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you have written testimony, I'm not certain that we've received it, so if you can provide that to the committee clerk, that would be very helpful, and we'll make sure that it's part of the record.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Britt Young from Explore Counseling. If you're in Zoom, can you please turn on and provide your testimony?
Aloha, can you see and hear me okay?
Oh, sorry, Ms. Young, sorry.
That's okay. I answer to everything. My video is a little bit choppy, but hopefully you can hear my voice. I'm Britt Young, and I'm the Executive Director for Explore Counseling, a group practice with 5 locations on Oahu, and we have approximately 45 clinicians, master's level to psychiatrists who work with us. I did submit testimony. Would you like me to summarize?
If you could highlight, otherwise we do have your written testimony and we understand that you're testifying in support.
Yes, ma'am. One of the main reasons that I would like to offer support to this measure is because not only because of the lack of mental health professionals and how this measure would increase the number of skilled professionals in this industry, but also because I have personal experience being a master's level clinician and going through the entire process from graduation from a master's program to a very long intern period to finally being licensed. And one of my main arguments around this measure has to do with scope of practice and focus, in so much as when you are graduated and do not have your license in hand, there are very few options for you to get employment. It is oftentimes low paid, and it is oftentimes only available in a handful of places, mostly agency work. Now, while you're at this agency work, it is a great opportunity to learn and hone your skills. However, it is also quite limiting in as much as if you are desiring to work with couples, for example, in your practice, you are oftentimes forced for lack of a better word, to work with populations that you wouldn't normally work with. For example, play therapy with small children. I was happy to work at the Sex Abuse Treatment Center, but I knew that I was going into family and couples work. So while I was learning the skills to be a play therapist, it did not so much help me in my future career as a couples and co-parenting therapist. Furthermore, we are one of the few states that does not have this provision. When I worked in Illinois, I was an associate licensed professional, and there I was able to hone my skills in couples and divorce counseling, and therefore that's where I was able to get the skills necessary. So being an intern is quite limiting. It is quite low paid. Only about half of my cohort that graduated with me is in the industry today. And by anecdotal evidence, it is mostly because they could not afford to live on the stipends paid by agencies.
Okay, Ms. Young, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Any other testifiers? Seeing none, members, questions? Representative Kobayashi, go ahead.
Do we have anyone from Attorney General?
Seeing none, question for, any other questions?
Well, maybe from whomever drafted this. Unfortunately, the title is limiting to mental health. And the bill seems to cover a number of occupational groups that do not deal with mental health, such as social work interns, marriage family therapists. I assume that some clients do not have mental health issues. And so I'm not sure how to.
Okay, Representative, we'll take your concerns and note them, and let's see from the other questioning, and then also as this bill moves along to push it to CPC. Other questions? Is anyone from DCCA present? Please come forward. You requested an implementation date of July 1st, 2025. If this is going to happen, can you do it in 1 year?
We can certainly try. We would need more staffing in order to accommodate the provisional licenses.
Okay. Anyone from the Board of Psychology here? And you can stay here if there's no one from the Board of Psychology. Come on up. Your comments indicate that, this is not an appropriate measure. Because it's seeking to clarify parts of the law that then impact reimbursement. I don't see that. I mean, clearly that's one of the things that it's going to assist in doing, but as I look into the bill, I don't see the connection with reimbursement that you seem to raise as a concern. Can you elaborate more?
Sure, thank you, Chair. I believe that the board was looking at the language specific to the insurance code, so referring to those tacked on to several sections with regard to reimbursement. Sorry, I don't have the sections in the testimony here.
It might be page 46.
So are you saying that it's not, it's just improperly placed in the HRS and that it should be placed elsewhere?
In a similar bill last year, the board had suggested that the insurance code be adjusted.
Okay. That might be a disagreement we have, but thank you for elaborating.
Okay, thank you,
All
Chair.
right. Members, any other questions? Go ahead, Representative.
For Board of Psychology, on your testimony, you're talking about page 38, indefinite waiver. I mean, I'm not sure how to parse out the difference between provisional license, waiver, an extension? Three things.
Thank you for the question, Representative. So in the bill, it does establish provisional licensure. And again, sorry, I'm only referring to Section 4 that has to do with psychologists. It does allow for provisional licensure for those who qualify. It also additionally adjusts the section that allows for psychologists unlicensed to practice for the state. And I believe that that waiver doesn't have a set time period, and therefore could potentially allow for indefinite practice without the license.
I mean, is that something that we should be concerned about? I mean, I assume that licensure means something. Otherwise, everybody should be waived indefinitely.
Yes. For this bill, HB 1300, the board will be meeting today to discuss further. From a similar bill last year, it did indicate that there was concern that that potentially could happen. And I believe something along the lines of similar to the provisional licensure limitation of 2 years was suggested.
Thank you.
Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Fernandez. Okay, it's going to be really important that you folks move forward and clarify these comments, and then if there's any issues, to bring amending language to the table. Otherwise, it's concerning to me that other states allow for this kind of provisional licensing. We are in a mental health crisis. I understand psychologists use these types of employees, and so we need to come to better consensus. And I would just urge, as you folks meet on February 3rd, that you express that communication and message to the board.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, seeing no other questions? All right, we're moving on. Moving on to House Bill 1451. This is related to our APRNs. We have testimony and support from the Hawaii State Center for Nursing. Ms. Reichert. Thank you. We have comments from the Department of Taxation, Mr. Suganuma, or his... Thank you. Comments, Board of Nursing, Chelsea Fukunaga.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Chelsea Fukunaga, the Executive Officer of the Board of Nursing. The board will stand on its written testimony in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Creekmore, Hawaii Association of Professional Nurses.
Hi there, my name is Dr. Bradley Kuo, here for Dr. Creekmore. I'm the legislative chair for the Hawaii Association of Professional Nurses. We stand in support and are here for any questions.
Thank you. Queens Health System, Mr. Mikulainek. Testimony and support. We have late testimony, members from CARES. Comments? Anyone from CARES, Community Advocacy, Research, Education Services? Any other testifiers in the room? Any testifiers on Zoom? Seeing none, members, any questions? All right, seeing none, we're moving on. House Bill 1212-1. This is related to pharmacists. We have testimony, comments from the Department of Human Services.
Department of Human Services stands on its written testimony providing comments. I'm requesting an extended invite.
Thank you. Comments from Insurance Division, Mr. Gordon Ito.
I'm mainly on behalf of Gordon, BCPA Insurance, we stand on our written testimony providing comments.
Thank you. University of Hawaii, Ms. Miriam Mobley Smith, in support. Hawaii Pharmacists Association, Corey Sanders, President, in support. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and other members of the Health and Homelessness Committee. My name is Corey Sanders. I'm President of the Hawaii Pharmacists Association. Wanted to stand in strong support. The only additional comment that I have to my testimony as written is that we encourage all payers to enact this bill simultaneously. So we currently don't have any payment platform under the medical benefit as at pharmacists. And moving forward, it would be easiest for pharmacists, payers, and patients to all enact this bill simultaneously to prevent any confusion just in the medical workspace in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony and support from Walgreens, Ms. Yajima or Ms. Ito?
Good morning, Chair. Walgreens stands on its testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Keto Prescription Clinic, Ms. Jody Nishida, in support. American Pharmacists Association, in support. National Community Pharmacists Association, in support. Belo Aquapodo, Koku. Hawaii Pacific Health, Mr. Robinson, in support. Times Pharmacy, Mr. Uemoto, in support. East Hawaii IPA, in support. Susan Mochizuki. Queens Health System, Mr. Mikulenek, in support with comments. Board of Pharmacy, comments.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and Committee. In preliminary discussions with HPHA, the board it's safe to assume that the board will likely support this measure. They will be meeting on Tuesday to discuss it further, but when the issue was first brought to the board, there was no actual bill ready yet, so they wanted to wait for the actual bill to be available before they took a formal position. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you. Members, we have numerous testimony in support from individuals largely. We also have some testimony in support from individuals that came in late. Are there any testifiers in person who would like to testify? Are there any testifiers in Zoom who would like to testify? Seeing none, members' questions? Seeing none, we are going to move on to House Bill 48. Next one is
955.
I appreciate everyone that's here. We're going to move 955 to the back of this agenda just because I want to provide as much time as possible. So let's jump over House Bill 955 at the moment and go to House Bill 485, members. 485. This is relating to marriage. We have testimony with comments from the Department of Health.
Good morning, Chair Bellotti, members of the committee, Lauren Kim, Policy Director for the Department of Health. The department will stand on its written comments. We look forward to being a part of the solution. There are some issues that we're still researching and working through. We do not think that there are any significant barriers, but we just need to be certain that what we're doing makes sense. And again, we look forward to this bill moving and being a part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony in support from Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party, Mr. Michael Goloyu.
Good morning, Chair Michael Glory Jr. on behalf of the Stonewall Caucus. We stand in strong support of this measure. Without this bill moving forward, there's no way for anybody to change their gender or their names on marriage certificates, especially for women outside of the certain period. If you don't do it within a certain period, or men, no matter what your gender is, you can't change your name after you get married. So for those that transition after marriage, it becomes impossible without a court order to make those amendments to a marriage certificate without this law. Also, for those that may have changed their religion and therefore changed their name, they would also have to get a court order to make those changes on their marriage certificate. As we pointed out in our testimony, that this is necessities when dealing with handling affairs of legal and financial concerns, as well as for traveling internationally. So for the safety as well as for equality and justice, we ask that you support this measure and move it forward. And we are sure that we can work with the Department of Health to handle any problems that they may see. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Goloyu. Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, Ms. Heather Lusk, in support.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Vice Chair and members of the committee. Just briefly, Heather with the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. We have the largest peer transgender program in the state and have been very involved in helping name changes on birth certificates. We hear from the transgender community that they have a lot of discrimination when their legal documents don't match their gender identity. And given this is the 10th anniversary of same-gender marriage in Hawaii, we are really excited to hear that the Health Department is willing to work on this bill and happy to participate if that's helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Lusk. Mr. Hoshija, Hawaii Civil Rights Commission, in support. North Shore Ko'olau Diversity Collective, in support. Mr. Joe Wilson. Ms. Joanne Okika Shigeko Kinao from Pilina Center for Wellbeing, in support. Members, we have a number of individuals testifying in support. Anyone in the audience who would like to testify, support or opposition? You can identify your name.
Sure. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name's Brianna. My pronouns are she or they, either is fine, and I'm here in support of this measure. You have my written testimony, I stand by that, and I really just wanted to take a minute to elaborate on a few things that some of the previous testifiers already mentioned. I'm not married. I don't know if I'll ever get married, so I don't have a marriage certificate to update, but the reason why I'm here is I have seen firsthand a lot of my friends who have been married, who are married or have been married. They've had really serious issues, not only in Hawaii, but across the mainland. It's a bigger issue. They have serious issues when they try to update their marriage certificates to change name, gender marker, gender reference, whether that be wife, husband, whatever. Like, this is a serious thing for members of our community, not only trans people. I think, like Michael said, you can change your name for other reasons too. It could be religious, it could be a number of other reasons. But this is really important to me because it's affecting my friends, and I do know personally firsthand how important it is to have documentation that really matches across the board, whether it be name, gender, sex, whatever. When stuff is out of sync, it creates very serious issues for people like me across the board. Like I said, I don't have a marriage certificate, but I know firsthand how important it is to have your correct, updated information on things like this. So thank you for hearing this measure. We have processes for driver's licenses, birth certificates, other things. There's no reason why we shouldn't let people update their marriage certificates with a pretty straightforward process. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Zoe. Any other testifiers please come forward. And then are there any other testifiers in Zoom? Please be ready. Go ahead.
Aloha, Kayaka, Chair, Vice Chair, and the Health Committee. My name is Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES, and I strongly support this measure and the LGBTQIA community. The LGBTQIA community is something that we should support, and this measure will help them get their marriage certificates in order. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Please, if there's written testimony, please provide it to the committee clerk so we can ensure that it's part of the record. Any other testifiers on Zoom? Please identify yourself and go ahead and start testifying.
Hello, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and esteemed committee members. Thank you for granting the opportunity to hear my testimony regarding HB 485 relating to marriage. My name is Abby Simmons from Honolulu, and I am testifying today in strong support for HB 485. This measure, as you know, aims to create a process for name and gender changes on Hawaii marriage certificates. Marriage certificates are vital for so many reasons, especially handling affairs of legal and financial concern. Some of the examples are filing taxes, applying for a loan or a mortgage, sharing or applying for health or other insurance benefits with new employers, giving tax-free gifts to a spouse, arranging property succession to a spouse. So there's many reasons where a marriage certificate is necessary. My spouse and I married on May 1st in 2018 here in Hawaii, and in 2020, with the loving support of my wife, I began my transition, completing my legal name and gender change in 2021. The process involved updating many documents, as you might be aware, such as my driver's license, passport, employer file, banking credit accounts, medical records, various insurance coverages, my undergraduate and graduate degrees. However, the only document and government identity record we were not able to update was our marriage certificate. Being able to update a marriage certificate with an individual's current legal name and gender is essential in preventing transgender individuals from being outed when presenting the certificate for the many reasons previously listed. When a trans individual or couple are outed, they risk harassment and discrimination. The appearance of an individual's old name and gender marker is an injustice due to the social stigma and discrimination that trans people sadly face. This injustice can be remedied effectively by issuing a corrected marriage certificate listing current legal name and gender. In effect, The marriage certificate would simply match current legal documentation. For this reason, I would like to ask you all to please support this measure. You will be making a positive impact in the lives of those of us who deal with a great amount of anxiety and fear when it comes to being asked to produce our marriage certificate. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Ms. Simmons. Any other testifiers in Zoom? Seeing none? Any other? This is.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Please identify yourself.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and esteemed committee members. My name is Sarah Simmons of Moanalua, and I'm before you today in strong support of this bill as well. We just met my wife, and 24 years ago, we were lucky to meet and fall in love while we were in college. And in 2018, we finally married here in Hawaii. In 2020, my spouse began the arduous process of transitioning to their new gender identity and all the hurdles for the legal name change. We had many discussions on this as a couple, and I have always given my full support and love while we underwent the process of transitioning together. I know that not all couples are able to survive this kind of change, but I love my spouse and I'm committed to her regardless of her gender. The process of changing your name and gender markers is not an easy one to navigate, but she pushed through the last few years to complete the legal processes available. All state and federal documents are now updated, and the one final document we feel we need for the future is to update to our marriage certificate. There is no process currently in place in Hawaii for this record to be updated, and for our couples and couples in the future, I ask that our state to craft this mechanism for name and gender markers to be updated. Marriage certificate is a vital document that follows us through our lives, and when we have to give copies of that document to prove our marriage to other agencies, it is not right for us to have to dead name my spouse or explain their transition each time. The need for all vital records documents to be updatable for name and gender changes is vital for the fairness to myself and other couples seeking to have their legal marriage certificates reflect their current legal names and genders. I would like to ask you all to support this legislation to allow those who have changed their names and gender markers to update their marriage certificates. At a time when so many states are seeking to restrict the rights available to transgender individuals, I am proud of the work our state has done and hope we continue to do toward the equal rights of all people. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you. Any other testifiers? Seeing none. Members, questions? Seeing none? No questions? Okay, moving on to House Bill 855. Mr. Suganuma, Department of Taxation, comments.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair of the Committee, Department of Taxation stands on its.
Thank you. Testimony in support from the Hawaii Diaper Bank, Ms. Hannah London. Testimony in support, Lacey Giro of the National Diaper Bank Network. I'm sorry, both of these should be on Zoom.
Yes, hello.
Good morning, go ahead.
Good morning. Aloha, my name is Hannah London, and I'm a board member of the Hawaii Diaper Bank, the state's first nonprofit organization dedicated to providing diapers, wipes, and other essentials to low-income families. Thank you, Representative Al-Baladi and other members of the Committee on Health and Homelessness for allowing me the opportunity to testify in strong support of HB 855. Passing this bill will provide immediate relief to families statewide. Diapers are expensive. The average low-income family spends $1,000 per year per child on diapers. For some families, this amounts to 14% of their total income. As a mother of a young child in diapers, I understand what it is like to worry about your child's well-being and how important diapers are to everyday life. Hawaii Diaper Bank serves the 1 in 3 families that struggle to afford diapers to keep their children clean, dry, and healthy. I am here on behalf of the families we serve and the more than 10,000 young children in Hawaii who are living in poverty. I'm here on behalf of the mother that we serve who's running from an abusive relationship, who is living out of her car and desperately needs help for her 2 children with diapers. I am here on behalf of the father working hard to stay out of the system and break generational patterns for whom receiving help with diapers means one less thing to worry about. I am here on behalf of the grandmother caring for her 4 grandchildren who has been emptying out disposable diapers, hanging them to dry, and reusing them just to make ends meet. I am here on behalf of the families statewide that we are unable to serve who can't afford the high cost of diapers. I appreciate the opportunity today to give support for HB 855. I stand on my written testimony, and I'm also available for any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Histo, Hawaii Diaper Bank via Zoom. Is she there?
Chair and committee on the health and homelessness. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share as well. I am actually the founder and president of the Hawaii Diaper Bank and currently on maternity leave. So Hannah London was gracious enough to step in and really take the lead this year with regards to this bill. We submitted something similar last year. It got all the way through the House and the Senate, and we were very saddened when it basically died in the Finance Committee when food and medicine was added to it. I have a 7-year-old and now a 1-month-old, and the whole reason the diaper bank started was the fact that I had extra diapers to donate, and being a family that can afford it, it's still expensive. And just doing the work that I've done, this is something that I wholeheartedly believe in. This would not only help the families that we serve, but it would also help families statewide, basically by alleviating some of the extra burden. Obviously, you know how expensive it is to live in Hawaii, and anything that we can do to help is instrumental. So thank you so much. I also submitted written testimony. If you have any questions, I am available for that as well. Mahalo.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Wu, Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for hearing this bill, and I will stand on our written testimony in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Doug Emig of Early Childhood Action Strategy and Support. Tina Yamaki, Retail Merchants of Hawaii in Support. Hi, Ms. Yamaki. Wonderful to see you.
Aloha and good morning. I'm Tina Yamaki with the Retail Merchants of Hawaii. And as in the past, we stand in support of this measure. But we would also like to see that adult diapers is also included in this, because we also know how many kapuna are on a fixed income too, and it might help them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Ms. Mercado, Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Ms. Nikki Ann Yee, Ma'i Movement, Hawaii. Mr. Tom Yamachika via Zoom, Tax Foundation of Hawaii. Not present. Jenna, Individual in Support. Erica Yamauchi, Individual in Support. And Kathy Kirch of Aloha Diaper Bank in support. Members, we have testimony in opposition from Ms. Iwasa that came in. Natalie Iwasa. Any other testifiers in the room? Seeing none, any other testifiers in Zoom?
Hi, I think my name is Lacey Giroux, and I am the manager of state policy for the National Diaper Bank Network. We're a national nonprofit with members, 2 members in Hawaii, and you heard from one of them today, who are serving the state to ensure that all families have the products they need to not only survive, but to thrive. And so diaper banks work to collect, store, and distribute diapers in their communities to address the issue of diaper need. 1 in 3 U.S. families cannot afford diapers, and with diapers not being covered by government assistance programs, diaper banks must fill the gap. Last year, the Hawaii Diaper Banks distributed nearly 300,000 diapers, and I'm honored to be here today in support of House Bill 855, which would exempt diapers from the general excise tax in Hawaii. This legislation recognizes the economic importance of clean diapers to children and their families, and the money saved from no longer paying this tax would be reinvested in the economy as families spend their tax break on meeting other basic needs or investing in their future. Additionally, most child care providers require families to provide a full day's worth of diapers when they drop their child off at the center. And when parents are not able to provide the 5 to 10 diapers required, they are often forced to miss work. In fact, we know that families that experience diaper need miss on average 4 days a month of work. A recent report estimated that the national cost of the child care crisis is $57 billion. And actually, I think that just increased with the recent news this week. And so we ask for your favorable passage of House Bill 855, which provides an opportunity for Hawaii to show critical leadership in investing in working families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giroux. We did get your testimony, so I apologize that we skipped over you so quickly. Thank you for being here with us via Zoom. Any other testifiers on Zoom? Please identify yourself. Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Representative Garcia.
For the Department of Taxation, I think this is a great bill first and foremost. What is the estimated revenue loss if this bill were to pass?
Thank you, Representative, for the question. However, we have not scored some of these bills, specifically this one, but we can definitely get back to the committee with that information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Members, seeing none, moving on to House Bill 955, moving back up the agenda. This is relating to Chapter 457J, Hawaii Revised Statutes relating to midwifery. Members, we have numerous testifiers. I'd like to spend the next 20 minutes devoting most of this hearing to this because I know that there is such great interest in it. Again, I want to remind all the testifiers for previous bills, we're not going to have the decision making until 11:30. All right? So first up on House Bill 955, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women. Okay, we have comments from DCCA. Ms. Tashima, wonderful to see you.
Thank you. The reason I'm standing before you, you have my written testimony. However, we did receive recommendations from Representative Natalia Hussey-Burdick late last night or early this morning. We have reviewed it and we're okay with her amendment. So I can provide you the information. It is in line with what we were asking for regarding the exemption for the midwife student, the preceptor, and yeah. So I can give that to you in a way where you can actually use that.
Okay, so you're proposing amendments.
We are proposing amendments because the original amendment deleted reference to a midwifery student. We want that put back in there. But this also clarifies the preceptor be a certified midwife.
Okay, thank you. I apologize, members. I shouldn't be asking questions. Yes, but okay. Any other?
So I can, how did you want me to get that?
If you could provide that information to the committee clerk in a letter to me, that would be sufficient.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Kagiwara, Councilmember Kagiwara, in support. Ms. Christy Duarte, in support, Hawaii Home Birth Collective. Via Zoom. Go ahead and identify yourself.
Hello, aloha, Chair and committee members. I was the chair of the Hawaii Home Birth Task Force created by Act 32 and also the board president of Hawaii Home Birth Collective. We offer full support. As the chair, I just wanted to stress how important this session is. As everyone knows, birth attendants with different cultural skills and practices will become illegal unless we pass new legislation this year. Act 32 did state that by the end of the 3-year period, the legislature intends to enact statutes that will incorporate all birth practitioners and allow them to practice to the fullest extent under the law. I wanted to highlight that the 2017 Sunrise Analysis Report acknowledged traditional midwives as a legitimate segment of the midwifery profession. And it recommended that licensure not benefit just the segment of the midwives, and that licensure actually be for all practicing midwifery, and recommended that the legislature examine whether they should use a private midwifery association for its certification. Because the concern was it would create an unnecessary and unfair competitive advantage for that segment of midwifery. The next point I just wanted to quickly share was the Hawaii Regulatory Licensing Reform Act talks about how regulation can be in the form of full licensure or other restrictions. So the good news is the Regulatory Licensing Act allows for regulation through other restrictions, not just licensure. There are very specific conditions right now under which the birth attendants are allowed to practice, including the informed consent disclosure forms. Therefore, regulation of the birth attendant through the use of these other restrictions sufficiently satisfies the requirement of the Hawaii Regulatory Licensing Reform Act. But if the birth attendant exemption is not regulated through these restrictions, but left to expire, many pregnant mothers will be unable to find birth care providers and could end up giving birth unassisted, and the health, safety, and welfare of the consumer is no longer protected as required in the Hawaii Regulatory Licensing Act. And lastly, I just wanted to state how the midwifery education obtained through the PEP process is a way that it will not unreasonably restrict entry by all qualified persons, as the Hawaii Regulatory Licensing Reform Act talks about. And we are open to exploring any amendments and working with others to be able to just make this happen. And I am available for questions. Thank you so much, Chair Belatti.
Thank you, Ms. Dwart. We have testimony and support from Ms. Rowley, Vice President of Pacific Birth Collective, in person. Okay, Ms. Teal of Ho'oponopono Peace Project, in person, in support.
We're here. I'm here.
Okay, Ms. Teal, you can sit, have a seat, just right there, you can have a seat, and then Ms. Rowley, go ahead.
Okay. Aloha Chair Belatti and committee members. Thank you for hearing my testimony. My name is Charlene Kiana Rowley. I'm the Vice President of Pacific Birth Collective, here today to give testimony on behalf of our Board of Directors in support of House Bill 955. Sorry, got a Pacific Birth Collective serves women, families, and birth and wellness professionals throughout Hawaii. We support autonomy in birth choice, whatever that choice may be. We support this bill because as a birth organization working throughout Hawaii, we personally know the positive impact our traditional midwives have on our community. This resolution is a good step towards respecting cultural traditions, protecting the autonomy of women and families, and not policing women's reproductive choices. The current midwifery statute, HRS 457-J, as written, does not address the roots of racism, oppression, and cultural erasure on which our current for-profit medical system is based. This includes midwifery schools, which are acknowledging the racism on which these institutions were founded. As written, only a few privileged practitioners have the ability to access and become licensed midwives in the state of Hawaii. Sovereign's Law, HB 955, seeks to extend the current exemption for those who are not easily defined and have not been acknowledged or included in our current healthcare system or this law. Throughout the portfolio evaluation process, it seeks to open a pathway towards a more equitable and diverse entry-level midwifery workforce. The Hawaii birth community stands in solidarity for our marginalized sisters from all walks of life who have not had equal access to the privileges of licensure. We have a long way to go towards reconciliation, but we urge you to reconsider passing HB 955 as a small step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Teal?
Aloha Chair and committee members. Thank you so much for hearing our testimony. I stand in strong support of HB 955. My name is Laulani Teal, and I am the coordinator of Ho'oponopono Peace Project. We do Ho'oponopono and other peace-related community work. I am also a birth worker, and I am also a la'aulapa'au, a traditional herbal practitioner trained under Papa Henry Auwai. And I want to emphasize how important this measure is as a first step in ensuring safety and cultural integrity in our communities. I'm going to say that there are a lot more traditional births happening than there appear to be happening. And in those communities, it's imperative that those birthing families have access to good support. I can speak for myself. 29 years ago, I gave birth to my first child and would have done so unassisted had it not been for a traditional midwife of another culture who volunteered without pay to come to the place where I was giving birth, which was not at home and not easy, and be there, and was able to bring my child back after 9 minutes of not breathing because of her traditional knowledge that no ambulance would have been able to help. No one would have been able to get to me in time and help. So my child, who is now 29 years old and a well-established Kanaka Maoli poet, champion poet and playwright, who is taking their play from Kumukahua Theater to Las Vegas now, is a result of the skills of traditional midwifery. And I want to emphasize that because we're in a really difficult place as a community right now. Quite honestly, the way that the law is right now favors people who are coming in from outside because it is so hard to meet the requirements of licensure currently that it's discriminatory, honestly. People from Hawaii, trained in Hawaii, do not have the access to meet that threshold. And so the PEP process is just one protection. We need a lot more protection than that, to be very clear. This measure is a really minimal step. We need protection for all cultural practitioners of all cultures. And the story that I just told, I think, is a good demonstration of how Hawaiian rights, I'm the front of a generation of birth attendants, of Kanaka birth attendants who have come up, and I was kind of one of the earlier ones. Now there are a whole lot more. And those birth attendants need trainers. They need people to help them to have the knowledge to be there to fill in those gaps. So it's not just about the licensure of or protection of the practitioners themselves. It's also about the protection of the community that we depend on. So mahalo.
Thank you, Ms. Teal. Thank you. We have a lot more testifiers to go through. We have Makalani Franco Francis of Pacific Birth Collective via Zoom. I want to urge, we do have your testimony. So please just highlight your written testimony so that we can make sure we can get to decision making and moving on. But I do want to hear from folks. So Ms. Makalani Franco Francis, if you're on Zoom.
Aloha, I'm here. Good morning. I'm here today to testify in support of this bill on behalf of Pacific Birth Collective as a board member, as well as a member of Malamanapua o Haumea. I'm also a home birth mother of 3 who have benefited from the care of traditional midwives in my birth. I ask that you support this bill to preserve the different pathways of birth practitioners like myself who dedicate our lives under the strict guidance of exceedingly knowledgeable and widely experienced elder midwives. These midwives of all backgrounds are filling in the gaps of maternal health care in places like rural areas in Hawaii. They're needed in their communities, they're respected in their communities, they're knowledgeable practitioners, and we ask that you please see them and acknowledge them and their skills and support this bill. Mahalo for your time.
Thank you. HHBC Nakia Ve'ave Kanekoa in support via Zoom. And I'm so sorry if I messed up your name. The Art Christian Church Russell Stewart via Zoom. Our Revolution Hawaii Dave Mullenix in support. Upcountry Dr. Bonnie Marsh in support. Mariah Strong, Pacific Birth Collective in support. Gomez Creative Collective in support. JB Entertainment Corporation in support. Ian Redicop, Hawaii Vanilla Company Chamber of Sustainable Commerce in support, Ms. Miley Meyer. Songbird Birth Services in support, Loquat Company LLC in support. Comments from the Hawaii affiliate of American College of Nurse Midwives via Zoom. Are they present? Okay, Aha Hui o na Kauka Association of Native Hawaiian Physicians in opposition. ACOG Hawaii section in opposition. Members, we have numerous testifiers, numerous in support and in opposition. Rather than go through those, is there anyone here in the room who would like to testify, either in support or opposition? If you could come forward, identify yourself. Let us know if you've submitted written testimony, and then go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I actually submitted a shortened version of my testimony, so I'll keep it short. Good morning, Chair and Vice Chair and other members. My name is Justin Burbidge. I'm here supporting HB 955 on behalf of JB Entertainment Corporation and its entirety. I was born and raised here on Oahu and currently reside here with my wife and 4-month-old daughter. As you can guess, she was born via the help of traditional midwives. I would like to propose today that each and every one of you sit here in a very precarious position today at this point in not only today but in history. You see, I'm not only a father but a film production studio executive out in Hollywood as of recently, and I commute sometimes twice a week to LA to work there. I'll be leaving later today, but I wanted to stay for this. My colleagues, of whom many of you would know their names, their faces, and their works, are constantly curious about our culture and traditions here in Hawaii. Of recent, our conversations have been consisting of the birthing process for my wife and how that took place here in Hawaii. When they learned we had used a traditional midwife and that it was allowed here in the state of Hawaii, the reactions were one of awe, they were stoked. And appreciation. We are currently having a deep interest in using traditional midwives as well. This is the greater Hollywood. You see, in Hawaii, it's still being looked at for exemplary leadership in today's world, especially for all things culture and tradition. Maybe unbeknownst to you in this room, traditional midwifery is quickly becoming a highly sought after way to help mothers deliver their babies, not only here in Hawaii, but especially in Hollywood now. You have an opportunity today to be the forerunners and the pioneers of protecting traditional midwifery. Hawaii is not just the only one watching this, nor is just Hollywood. The world is watching, and they constantly are, and that's why I'm urging the support of HB 955 to be the examples to the rest of the nation and our world to support traditional midwives, but also support and protect mothers' choice on how they choose to give birth to their kikis. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Burbidge. Anyone else here in person who would like to testify in support or opposition? And then, so we have one person here, a second person here, and then a third person. Can you start to identify if there's people in Zoom? Okay. Go ahead.
Aloha board members, my name is Ivana Burbidge. I'm a wife, married to a local boy where we live here in Oahu. I'm also a mother, a new mother, and a professional photographer. And as of recently, a social media influencer. I'm here to firmly support HB 955 because I'm a new mother and gave birth via traditional midwives, and I'm a huge advocate for it now, after learning so much through my own experience. Recently, however, I shared my story via the internet and have new followers amounting over 14 million people on my page in a week and about 3 million a day. These followers are not just from Hawaii or the continental US, but they are from around the world. You wouldn't believe the interest of support for traditional midwifery because I get hundreds and if not thousands messages every day expressing interest in how they can have a birth similar to mine, with a team who provides such personal and intentional care as a mother and for their babies. I'm proud to have done this in such a beautiful place and with such an amazing team of traditional midwives that I got to choose here in Hawaii. Midwives who are born and raised here and who've passed their information down generations, all the way down to me for this special manner. You see, the reason I'm standing here today asking for support of HB 955 is to allow Hawaii to be in the front of protecting cultural knowledge and these ways. More than ever, I feel like people are starting to look back to Hawaii to be a leader again and the way to spread their own culture. You have the opportunity to be leaders on this and let millions of people that are watching us and viewers on the internet also see what a smart and forward-facing state Hawaii is and their people, ahead of their time, but always looking back on their culture. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for purposes of organization, if you're here for the 9:30 a.m. meeting, we're going to take this to about 9:40. So I'm going to let you folks know we have about 10 more minutes of taking testimony. So we're going to the second person, and then we're going to go to the third person in the room, and then go to Zoom. Sir, you can come up to the microphone, please.
Aloha and good morning. My name is Ryan Nicholas Luther. I'm not sure if I did a written testimony. I did a few this week, so if I did, I stand on that. Just wanted to voice my strong support on HB 955, which is a sovereign's law, the midwifery. So I had a brief statement here, just go ahead and read out loud. It said the midwife is a personalized care for women and families all over the world. A midwife gives encouragement in every season of pregnancy. The midwife is extremely invested in the physical and emotional well-being of the woman plus family, making strong positive impacts on any medical decisions by providing many resources for knowledge, which the women use to determine their decisions with the viable information that is personalized for themselves and their baby by the midwife. To deny women and families the right plus liberty to choose midwifery, which is a proven and viable option, is to narrow the choice of a woman and monopolize prenatal care, thus forcing all women out of any personal choice of their body and their baby. Denial of a midwife choice would ultimately eliminate any pro-choice option for a woman in regard to their pregnancy and birth. So again, I strongly support HB 955 as an amazing and proven safe option for women to make the best decision for their pregnancy and birth. And also, it's also personalized to me. I have a lot of friends moving here to Hawaii and learning about this, didn't know much about it. And I have many friends now that are involved in this, and it's just a great option for women and very, very safe and personalized. So I just appreciate your time and listening, and mahalo.
Thank you. Ma'am, if you can come forward, identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Yi Nguyen. I'm a licensed naturopathic physician and traditional midwife. First of all, thank you, Representatives Belatti, Takanushi, and fellow representatives for just taking the time and energy to hear this bill out. I've had the honor of supporting women giving birth both at home and the hospital for almost 20 years living here in Hawaii. I truly believe that how a woman wants to give birth, with whom, and where is a very personal and sacred choice that needs to be protected. It is a decision that can affect her on so many levels years to come. An empowered and non-traumatic birth is one where we have options and are fully informed of the risks and benefits of each decision that we make. As we limit the choices that mothers have by making traditional midwifery and certain CPMs illegal, we are faced with issues of safety. We drive certain practitioners underground, where integrative care becomes more difficult. There becomes a lack of transparency for fear of persecution. Or worse yet, our traditional midwives become extinct, and the art of traditional midwifery becomes lost. Many women actually seek out a certain type of midwife, one that isn't licensed or certified. A woman's reproductive rights is at stake more than ever at this moment in time. All across the globe, women's bodies are being regulated by the government, and sadly, many of them by men. No offense. There is so much fear around the unknown of birth and a need to control it. Each woman has the right to choose what is right for her body, for her specific situation, and for her family. I support each and every woman's right to choose, the right to informed consent, and ultimately, their right to their own birth sovereignty. Thank you again for your service and understanding this very complex.
Thank you. Members, we have 8 testifiers on Zoom. I want to leave some time for questions, so I really urge if you have testimony to stand on your written testimony and to just really highlight what's most important for the committee. So first up, we have Keani Rollins. I believe that's council member?
Yep.
Council member Rollins? Yes. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead.
Mahalo for this opportunity to testify in strong support of HB 955, and I will make this short so that there is time at the end for questions. I'm Keani Rollins Fernandez, Maui County Council member from Molokai, one of the places that would be disproportionately impacted if these exemptions are not passed. I'm here to speak in strong support of our women who have defended the sacredness of bringing life into this world. In another time and place, they would have been burned at the stake, and I fear the repercussions of not passing this bill will result in the criminalization of this sacred practice, being driven underground and in hiding. Our people have already been robbed of so much. I ask that you support this bill today. Mahalo.
Thank you, Councilmember. Former Senator Laura Ocasio.
Aloha, Chair Bellotti, nice to see you. Thank you so much for hearing this bill. My main point is really to just mahalo you for hearing this. I know that it takes a lot of time and very much appreciate you. So prior to becoming state senator for District 1 in Hilo, I have been a birth support professional for many years. I received my certificate of training for labor support professional in 2004. So I just wanted to echo the Pacific Birth Collective as well as the Hawaii Island Birth Collective, Hawaii Birth Collective's, testimony, and really acknowledge here in public that there is tons of community support for, again, this sacred thing. The reality is that this is a reproductive rights issue. This is a pro-choice issue. And so for us to recognize that as such and to dive into the details with holding that knowledge is extra important. So I just wanted to convey that. And lastly, I just want to acknowledge for you folks that Hawaii County Council, I believe, as well as Maui County Council, will be hearing resolutions on this matter as well, just to urge the legislature to act on this. So mahalo nui for your time.
Thank you. Rabbi Rachel via Zoom. And then we're going to have Susanna Kinsey. Go ahead.
Aloha, everyone. Rabbi Rachel Short. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. I am humbled and honored and grateful to serve as the only rabbi on the east side of the Big Island of Hawaii for over 10 years now. And up until a few months ago, I was the only rabbi on the island. I'm here to speak to this as a religious and cultural practitioner and remind everyone that midwifery is an ancient part of Judaism, and our beliefs, our religious and our cultural system going back 5,783 years. So I'm here in strong support of this bill, and anything that would happen that would not allow this bill to pass, pretty frankly, would just be a violation of our religious freedom. Midwifery and traditional birth is a part of our religion, and to deny a Jewish woman the ability to have a home birth via midwifery or anything else that this bill entails would be a denial of that religious freedom. I myself, I'm a mother of a 4-year-old. I had a birth with a traditional midwife because I am a rabbi, and that is our traditional religious and cultural practices. And we are here, I am here as a cultural religious leader, practitioner, to strongly urge you to allow us to have a space to practice our religious and spiritual beliefs with integrity in a way that we've always been allowed. So a failure to pass this is honestly a violation of our religious rights as far as I see it. So again, I thank you all so much for your time, Chair, committee members, everyone here in strong support of this bill, because it's bills like this that are a very small step to the inclusion, equality, recognition of religious and cultural freedom that I stand for and am here to urge you to support today. Mahalo nui loa. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rabbi. Susanna Kinsey, and again, we need to have some time for questioning. So this bill is going to be moving. If please just highlight the really important parts for the few remaining testifiers. Ms. Kinsey?
Thank you so much for hearing this bill. My name is Susanna Kinsey. I'm a home birth mother of 3. I'm also a chemistry and physics teacher. I'm an ordained minister, and I'm a traditional birth attendant. I feel this bill will only affect not very many of us, and I'm one of them. Currently, I'm in a situation where I have attempted to follow the law and try to get certified, and I found it impossible to do so because of both financial constraints and family commitments that I have here. And as a traditional birth attendant, we really believe that the mother is most important. So we're there to support the mother in the way she needs to be supported. And so in order to be allowed to continue offering this, removing the exemption, or sorry, the end date for the traditional birth attendants would be life-changing. I have essentially been in a situation where I've felt like I need to give up because there isn't a pathway for me to continue offering this work, this sacred work, to women in a legal fashion. So I really, really urge you to pass this bill. I would like to stand on my testimony, available for questioning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lantana Hoke, and followed by Alex Amy. Lantana?
Aloha Chair, committee members, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. My name is Lantana. I was born and raised on Maui, and I work for the Pacific Birth Collective, as well as teach at the University of Hawaii Maui College. I stand in strong support of HB 955, and I stand on my written testimony, but I just wanted to highlight a few things. Midwifery licensure was a really positive step towards, had great intentions towards improving maternal health. Which is a dire need in Hawaii and the whole nation, but the law doesn't account for some really important considerations. And this bill is a really win-win with its two considerations of respecting reproductive choice and providing pathways for midwives. I think that making this exemption permanent, it's going to keep our communities safer. At PBC, I've worked with many women who are struggling with choices about their care, and so many of them refuse to go back to the hospital, refuse to go to the hospital in general, past traumas or violence they've experienced or injury. And I've worked with, we have such limited options for midwifery care on Maui and in all of Hawaii in general, that a lot of those women can't even find a birth attendant. And so they're struggling with the choice of giving birth at home alone rather than, go into the system. And I'm just afraid if we further erode these options, we're going to force pregnant women into some really dangerous situations and difficult choices. And I'd also like to point out that women are going to continue to seek this care no matter what the law says. It's kind of like abortion. And that's going to force these traditional midwives into really difficult ethical positions because people are going to be asking them for this care. And it's safer for all of us if it's above board and they're recognized. And then, I'd just like to highlight and thank the writers of the bill because the second win is this reasonable pathway towards licensure. It's nationally recognized. It's a really good model, and I stand in strong support of that. So thank you so much for hearing this. And at a time when so much of America is whittling away at reproductive freedom and choice for women, I commend the board for hearing this and potentially standing for women.
Okay,
I respectfully ask that you pass this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to recess this, but come right back. I just want to open up the other hearing before we run into any problems, and then I'm going to come back to this. So it's just a little technical thing. So recess, adjourn. The 9:30 agenda at 10 a.m. All right. So recessing the 9:30 agenda, reopening the 8:30 a.m. agenda. Again, I want to highlight, we have your testimony and support. Please highlight and be brief, otherwise we won't have time for questions. We have next up Alex Amy, followed by Izini Danson, Elissa, and Panalope Mackenzie. Alex?
Hi, Chair and committee members. My name is Alex Amy, and I'm testifying in strong support of HB 955. I live here in Maui as a labor and delivery nurse, and I'm a student certified nurse midwife at Georgetown University. I personally support this bill to expand access to midwifery education, accreditation, and acknowledge that my own privilege has made it possible for me to become a certified nurse midwife, and that many others here do not have equal access to that. There are many barriers to becoming a midwife here in Hawaii, especially for people of color, and including Indigenous and Native Hawaiians. There is a clear discrimination embedded in HRS 457-J that adversely impacts individuals from marginalized communities from being able to become licensed midwives and provide culturally congruent, safe midwifery care to their own communities. If our state of Hawaii is making requirements for midwives, we need to provide equal and unbiased access to education and acknowledgement of Indigenous practices that are the foundation of midwifery in Hawaii. I stand for equal access to become a midwife, as well as acknowledgement of traditional apprenticeship pathways for continuation of cultural practices and health and healing that have been practiced for thousands of years. I strongly support HB 955 that can help us move to diversity, equity, inclusion in our entry-level midwifery workforce in Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dawson, followed by Alyssa.
Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair. I first want to thank you for hearing this bill today. And I do want to stand on my testimony with just adding additional parts. I'm one of the CPMs in the state that became a CPM through the PEP process. And so this bill would directly impact me as well. And I just wanted to highlight the educational process of a PEP student. As I did my midwifery training, I was required to sit for an exam, which is the equivalent, which is the same exact exam as other MEEC CPM students. This exam, as long as you are able to show that you have sufficient knowledge, you can be certified as a CPM. And I just wanted to highlight that the training that I received ideally is a traditional training. And I was trained under an apprenticeship model. So through that model, I gained a lot of my knowledge and a lot of the information as a midwife, as a training student midwife, the same way any of our traditional midwives would learn, one-on-one with their teacher, knowing what is safe and what is not safe, knowing how to use herbs and different things to treat our moms and the babies, and to just really demonstrate that knowledge was what was most important. So I just wanted to highlight that the training that I received
Thank you, Ms. Dawson. If you can wrap it up.
Okay, yeah, just the training that I received is equivalent to that of the MEEC students, and that exam that I sat for is the same exam, and that we should be able to be licensed due to the fact that the knowledge that we are able to demonstrate through that exam. Thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa, on Zoom.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi. Sorry, just one moment. Hi, thank you for your time. I did submit a written testimony, so I'd just like to expound on a few things. Oh, man. I'm so sorry.
We'll come back to you, Alyssa. Ms. Panalopi
Thank
McKenzie.
you.
Ms. McKenzie? Okay. Are there any other?
She's here.
Please proceed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead, yes.
Can you hear
go
me?
Ahead. Please go ahead, and please, we have your testimony.
Okay.
I'm looking at it.
Okay.
Please only highlight, otherwise we will not have time for questions.
Okay, I will just allow my testimony that was written to be in, and I just want to really make sure that we understand that this, standing in full support of this, that cultural humility and sovereignty are basic human rights, and outside of the midwifery model exists the current disaster in maternal health. These bills and this work that midwives have been doing for centuries in the life of all of our humans must be recognized. So I will cut my testimony short, but I thank you for showing up. I thank you for bringing this bill, and I thank you to all the midwives and the people that work for collaborative maternal health in Hawaii and globally. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Ms. McKenzie. Alyssa?
Hi, yes, I'm so sorry about that. Thank you for your time. I did submit a written testimony, so I'd just like to expound on a few things. My name is Alyssa B. Shaw, and I'm in strong support of HB 955. Traditional midwifery fosters a mother's intuition and comes alongside her to support the mental, physical, and spiritual preparation necessary to bring forth life. This kind of care is just not accessible within our conventional healthcare system. Pregnancy and birth is as personal as it gets, and it is not to be politicized or medicalized. Thank you again.
Thank you, Alyssa. All right, I really want to open up to questions. Any questions from our members?
I'm sorry, I didn't get an opportunity to testify.
Okay, Ms. Hucker, go ahead as we wait for any questions. Go ahead, Ms. Hucker.
Aloha, my name is Jordan Hucker. I live on the island of Maui. I am a mother of two. I'm a mother of two. I've had traditional midwives each time. I have submitted written testimony, so I do just want to address some misinformation that no doubt we've been dealing with in the traditional birth world, and that you will hear from testimony in opposition. The reality is that 2% of births happen outside of the hospital in the state of Hawaii. just 2%. So the other 98% of births for Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander women, they are dying at a rate of 200% more in that hospital system. It is because of systemic bias. It is because of the lack of culturally competent care. It is no other reasons other than that. The reality is here in Maui and in Maui County, traditional midwifery is the highest bar in terms of standard of care. If you gave birth in a hospital, at what point did the nurses who helped you deliver come back to your house and make sure you were okay as your milk came in? At what point did they sit with your oldest daughter as she became a big sister to let her know that she was loved and ushered into this new role? Traditional midwifery here on Maui is sought first. It is not backwards, it is not uneducated. If anything, it is more accountable than people who can fly to my island with ready-made credentials who do not understand the context or the culture of the place that they are in. This past election, I ran for a local county council seat while I was pregnant. I gave birth 11 days before the primary, and I got back to campaigning 30 to 40 days after I had given birth. It would have been impossible for me to do that under a classical care via the hospital or even a CPM who didn't realize that the health of my family, a licensed midwife who didn't realize that the health of my family contributes to the strength and the health of our community. Traditional midwifery is the standard of care. And if anyone is coming forward saying that it's in any way dangerous or a problem, it's slander functionally. Because the reality is in 98% of those other births are where our women are dying. And it is during that postpartum care. It is when there is no one to care for them, when they go home and they are dropped on their own. You have to understand this is a public health crisis. Please let 2% of births be healthy and recognize that these traditional midwives understand their scope. Birth is not an emergency. Birth is an opportunity for women and families to be supported and cared for. I strongly support HB 955. Thank you so much, Chair Abulati, for scheduling this hearing. This is a very important issue, whether you have a connection to it or not. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Hawker, thank you for your passionate testimony. I do want to say, though, and I appreciate your testimony. I hear it. I see and acknowledge all the people here, and especially the babies here. It's wonderful to see everyone here. But I do want to acknowledge that I had a similar experience, just like you. I had my baby, my second baby, while I was campaigning for a primary, gave birth to her, and then 30 days after giving birth to her, I was back on the trail. I had my baby through the westernized system. I think there is a space for both. I think that is important to understand that there is a space for both. So with
we
that,
can make space for both, but currently traditional midwifery doesn't have the space that it deserves. There is space for both.
Ms. Hawker, I just wanted to make that comment, and now I'm going to open it up to questions for the members, because I want this space to be a space where there is both that we have and consider. And that is what we are trying to do with the passage of this bill. So members, I now want to open it up to questions for you. Are there any questions? No questions? Go ahead, Representative Kobayashi.
For DCCA, midwives, what do you call yourself now?
It's a midwives program.
It's not a board?
No.
Okay. This sounds like 3-4 years ago. Is there any prospect that some of the differences will be resolved within, say, 1 or 2 months?
Differences in
Differences in all these testimonies.
Okay,
People
so
saying, I adamantly oppose, I strongly oppose. The same tone on the other side, I strongly support, etc.
Okay, so if we're talking about the repeal date, that's currently in, no, we're not, I don't.
We're talking about the bill, including the repeal
Let me
date.
ask it another way, Representative, if I can. In looking at the measures and looking at the space of regulation for midwives in total, Has DCCA looked at what's happening in Oregon?
No.
And the accommodations made in Oregon's law to allow for traditional midwifery?
Okay, so the current law doesn't include any, except for the birth attendant, doesn't recognize.
So I understand
traditional.
our law, but
Right.
has DCCA, in looking at this statute and understanding that in other jurisdictions, there are spaces created for traditional midwives that go beyond what we've already accommodated for, has DCCA looked at those kinds of regulations that may provide some of the compromise language that Representative Kobayashi is talking about?
I would say not recently, but I want to say that, because I wasn't involved in the initial legislation, that was discussed to recognize, quote, instead of a birth attendant, a traditional midwife. We haven't looked at that further, but also in our testimony, I just want to point out that we have no position on the repeal date for the birth attendant in this bill.
Do you have a position on it?
We do not have a
You do
position.
not.
So we
So
have
would
no
you be
issue.
open to extending that repeal date if necessary?
That is-
To
we-
ensure that this is not a criminalized
Right.
behavior? Because clearly there are people who are able to do this.
Right. I believe previously there was concern, but I think that we no longer have that concern to take out the repeal date.
Okay. Thank you. Does that help, Representative Kobayashi? Does that help? Okay. I think we need to look at those Oregon laws. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can I just offer a little?
Okay, wait. No other questions? Okay.
What's on that same topic?
So it's 9:56. I'm going to open this up just for 4 more minutes because we need to move on. But if since I'm seeing you and acknowledging that you want to testify in front of the committee, if you can identify yourself and provide us your testimony.
Yes, hi. My name is Jamie Lewis, and I am a mother of 3 home birth babies in my home in Kailua. I am a traditional midwife and trained here on Oahu through various options of training. And you all have seen me down here every year that we've been allowed to be down here because it is very much a reproductive choice. I just wanted to offer clarity on the question about Oregon law. So we are actually have been in contact, HIHBC and various other folks who've been crafting this law. We are trying to model off of the Oregon law because it seems to be the most comprehensive. They have really good statistics and data, and they are in full support of honoring all practices of midwifery, not just the westernized medical profession. And so I have offered testimony year after year. I echo the sentiment of all the folks who are in support because the reality is we may just be less than 2%, but we are part of the community and we are sought after. People look for alternatives. And so thank you so much. This is not for me as a traditional birth attendant. This is for my daughters. This is for everybody's children in the future, that we need to preserve choice.
Thank you. Just one comment on that. So when I was previously health chair, yes, I was very much aware of this issue. Oregon, Washington, many of the progressive states are looking at this. So my commitment is that we are going to be looking at some of those laws. I mean, I think there is some progressive activity happening. So certainly something that we can model off of, and I think reassure some of our concerns.
Yeah, there are several states that have variations of this, and we have been actively communicating with their midwifery guilds on how they got their laws protected, passed, preserved. And so it is, as some of our other folks mentioned, this is a national and international rise up. There are plenty of organizations that are starting to realize what is being lost by forcing people to go through one scope.
All right, members, seeing no other questions, we were going to recess and adjourn at 10 a.m. for our 9:30 a.m. hearing. This hearing, we're going to do decision making at 11 a.m. Or 11:30. All right, we're going to take a recess. Good morning. Reconvening our 9:30 a.m. Hearing of the Committee on Health and Homelessness. It is Friday, February 3rd. Mahalo for your patience to the testifiers for our 9:30 agenda. House Bill 1404 relating to the Community Court Outreach Project. Up first, we have testimony from Mr. Koshiba, Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness. We have testimony from the judiciary. Support. Testimony from Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center in support.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Heather Lusk with the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. The Community Outreach Court has been an incredible blessing to the community that helps resolve all petty, tickets and bench warrants so that we can get people housed. H3RC has been a supporter of the Outreach Court from the beginning, providing case management, and now we're actually providing a literal space in our office in Kaka'ako to be able to have a town version. These teams need a bit more appropriation to support them, especially around safety. They've been having challenges getting the enough sheriff support in order to expand, and there's so much need to help get people housed. One of the biggest barriers we have is bench warrants and citations that can be easily cleared by the Community Outreach Court. And lastly, it's an incredible collaboration between public health and public safety, the judiciary, the prosecutors, and public defenders. I cannot speak highly enough about this program and really encourage the committee to not only codify it permanently, but to increase the support so that we can continue to address the homelessness crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Hawaii Disability Rights Center in support. Louis Erdeshik.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we stand in support. Thank you.
Mr. Aaron Ruddock, individual in support. Office of the Public Defender in support with comments.
Good morning, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Takanouchi, and members of the committee. My name is James Tabe. I'm State Public Defender. CLC was established to assist nonviolent offenders experiencing homelessness, and it has truly been a success. And that's basically due to the efforts of the cooperation from the prosecutor's office, especially Mark Tom, from our team at the public defender's office, our current coordinator, Anna Kia, and the two previous ones, Jenilyn Kamara and Noel Kakimoto, and to the COC judges. And in particular, I wanted just to mention this program really took off because of the late Judge Lendio. I mean, she was instrumental in getting this thing started. I mean, without her, it who knows where it would have gone, but I just want to make sure we recognize her. We just request, we do support the bill. We support the fact that to make it permanent. But we do request that the detailed procedures of do this, the prosecutor does that, the public defender does this, and et cetera, be deleted or stricken. I think it's just, I don't think any other programs have this codified in their specialty court bills. It will give us the flexibility because who knows what would happen. Even during the pandemic, we had to veer off those rules. And I would not want to come back here and bother you guys just to change one section of something. It's just not worth it. If this bill does pass, there is the funding issue. I did point out in our testimony, I believe the judiciary has as well. We don't mind being the middleman. I mean, maybe for the prosecutor's office, it may be best to keep on doing that since it is a non-state agency. But if the judiciary, if this bill passes, if this committee is going to fund the judiciary for positions, there are monies already earmarked through us, and the state might as well just write one check to them rather than having go through us for the judiciary. Other than that, I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tabe. Wonderful to see you here. City and County of Honolulu Prosecutor's Office, Mr. Tom.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. As Mr. Tabe already said, kind of state what the late Honorable Judge Darlene Lendio always kind of talks about this program. It is a very unique program in that 3 agencies almost serve as 3 legs to a chair, and this chair stands and works because all 3 agencies work together and they do their part. With that, she also always said that doesn't ever see it as a project, as a program, as a court. It's a family. The court staff, whether it's the participants in the program, we are all a family. And with that comes disagreement, not being able to see eye to eye on certain ways and directions. But what's very unique about a family is that you always come back together and you discuss and you come to an agreement. And that's what's happening at this point. In the last couple months, we've been sitting at the table. I think we've been having very positive discussions, not always as positive we would like to go, but we are making progress. And I believe this bill and codifying is just a little premature at this time, as all 3 agencies look like they still are willing to have conversations, and conversations have not been exhausted at this time. Going back also on what Mr. Tabe said, codifying it really kind of hinders the flexibility to change with the environment, to change with this type of community and population that we deal with. And having, even if all agencies are in agreement on something, we would have to come back to the legislature, recodify that even for some minimal or minor policies and procedures. So with that, we would suggest maybe putting a pause on this bill at this point to let us continue to work on policies and procedures moving forward with direction. If not, if you'd like to codify something very more similar to other specialty courts like environmental court, women's health court, where it allows the 3 agencies to create the policies. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Joanne Ochi, comments? Any other testifiers? Any late testimony? Seeing none. Any testifiers on Zoom? Seeing none. Members, questions for anybody?
Question.
Go ahead, Representative Kobayashi.
For PD, Public Defender, are you suggesting that pages 4 to 8 be stricken?
That's the telling us what to do and whatnot? Yes.
Okay.
It's the micromanaging portion of the bill? Yes.
Right. Subsection 3.
Yeah.
Project process.
Yeah, project process, that's the section,
Thank you.
yes.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Members, we're going to move on to House Bill 1442. This is the rehabilitation bill. Members, this is the bill that's coming out of the informational briefing we had prior to the start of session, or excuse me, prior to the Chief Justice's State of the Judiciary speech. First up, we have testimony and support from Department of Health.
Mr. Michael Champion from the Department of Health, standing on testimony with support.
Thank you. Governor's Office, Mr. Koshiba.
James Koshiba, Governor's Business, and I'll stand on my written testimony.
Thank you. Attorney General, Mr. Cook.
Good morning, Chair Bellotti, members of the committee. I guess Vice Chair has stepped out. I'm Deputy Attorney General Albert Cook from the Department of Attorney Generals, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. They're more specifically laid out in our testimony, but generally the department opposes expanding the Act 26 diversion program. We do oppose releasing defendants on conditions while awaiting placement. We have concerns about some of the proposed changes to the committee process, and oppose reducing the prosecutor's role in determining placement of defendants in this diversion program, as well as requiring the defendant's agreement to be placed into the program. Our written testimony provides more detailed analysis, and I will be available for questions if any.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Support with comments, Public Defender.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is William Bento. I'm a Deputy Public Defender. We support the bill in part and oppose in part. We support the fact that it's going to be expanded to certain misdemeanor offenses and the Class C felony offense of promoting a dangerous drug in the 3rd degree. Although the term promoting seems to describe something more nefarious, we're really talking about the possession of very small amounts of dangerous drugs like methamphetamine or cocaine or heroin in some instances. And many of the individuals caught up in the criminal justice system for those offenses also suffer from mental illness or a dual diagnosis situation. And so expanding the program to those individuals will be greatly helpful. We do have an issue with the amendment to HRS 706-625, which would basically allow a judge on a revocation of probation to add the terms mandatory mental health assessments and mandatory mental health treatment. And if the person fails to participate successfully, they can then be incarcerated. Or if it's found that the treatment is not going to be helpful, that the person could be incarcerated based strictly on the violation of that condition. And we feel that that is a regression in the way that we handle mental health and the way that we treat mental health and those suffering from mental health. I'll be available for questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Support Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. Mark Patterson. In support. In strong support, Judiciary, State of Hawaii, Brandon Kimura. Members, I will note that I was called by various testifiers that there's competing bills, so they may not be here, and many of them said that they would stand on their written testimony. I believe the Judiciary is one of those. In support, Institute for Human Services. In support, Ellen Godby Carson. I'm sorry, Connie Mitchell, are you available by Zoom? Yes. Go ahead, Ms. Mitchell, for IHS, Institute for Human Services.
I'm sorry, we'll stand on our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay Ann Pacheco, in support. Okay, and then we also have testimony in support from Honolulu Police Department. Very interesting. Testimony in support.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Captain Manuel Hernandez of the Training Division for the Honolulu Police Department. The HPD supports House Bill 1442, and we recognize the importance of the proper diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation of those undergoing mental health or disease issues, and the importance of reducing the recidivism rates of those individuals on release. We understand in the community's frustration on what could be viewed as a rotating door with regard to criminal justice system. We support, when found applicable by the courts, the diversion of such individuals to treatment programs to include the commitment to the custody of the Director of Health for detention, assessment, care, and treatment. For the community, nothing can be more frustrating than, and it's a much more positive outcome than a release from custody without treatment, only to possibly reoffend shortly thereafter. Furthermore, the HPD supports court-mandated conditions of release for individuals subject to treatment programs, furthering the accountability of these individuals in addition to their treatment and rehabilitation. I'll be available for questions, and thank you very much for the opportunity to testify this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for weighing in on this very important bill. Any other testifiers here in the room? Mr. Tong for prosecutors.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Apologize for the late testimony. If it hasn't made it in, we will make sure that the members get that testimony. Mark Tom, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney for the department. The department is in opposition to parts of House Bill 1442, but also in our testimony does provide some support for parts of the bill as proposed. Just big picture, the department is in support of many mechanisms, strategies that effectively provide mental health treatment for individuals. So first and foremost, that's where our department is coming from. The only concern that we do have that we want to bring to the committee is we have some concerns with some of the statistics that have been presented regarding individuals that go through Act 26 and I guess what the term recidivism, or if we're using rearrest, what might be the issue that we are seeing in the differencing of opinions on the success rate or the recidivism is the way that each group or agency is defining these types of terms, which is very important. And I think the department is more than willing to sit down with the committee and with other stakeholders to kind of figure out what metrics and what terms we're using for those to see a proper big picture of the success rate of the program. The other one is what has already been mentioned by the Attorney General, is in removing the prosecuting attorneys in decision-making on certain individuals into certain diversion programs. With that, Chair, thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you. Any other testifiers?
Yes, Chair Bellotti, forgive me. This is Heather Lusk with H3RC. I believe our testimony was late. I'll be brief. As you may know, we have been doing the law enforcement assisted diversion, just about to release the third evaluation of such, which has shown that diversion, at least in our program, has been effective. So we strongly are supportive of this bill, understand there may need to be some adjustments, and wanted to really highlight the addition of the promoting a dangerous drug. As you heard from the defender, it's even a small amount of residue for personal use would be considered a felony and promotion, even if it wasn't. And we are having a hard time housing and helping people in recovery get back their lives because of the kind of felonies for very small levels of drug possession. So thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Lusk. Ms. Lusk and Mr. Tom, please provide your written testimony if it has not yet been provided. There's a little bit of confusion, but it's not a problem. Just make sure it is submitted to the committee clerk, and we do acknowledge that we have it. Any other testifiers? Okay, any testifiers on Zoom? Seeing none. Members, questions? I have questions. Mr. Cook. I appreciate that the Department of the Attorney General surfaces early this question about what kinds of convictions or charges fall into this, because I do not want this issue to derail this bill in the 11th hour. I think the parties need to look carefully at what the misdemeanors that might be applicable if we expand Act 26, and I think there needs to be serious consideration of promoting a dangerous drug, because as we know, the offenses jump very quickly, and it may actually be not for the wholesale selling of the drug, which is what promoting should be, but just even some amounts of residue.
Right, promoting a dangerous drug in the third degree is basically possession. It's just the naming.
So I don't want the
statute.
public to be misled that this is a very violent felony or a very bad felony. What it is it might just be residue in a pipe. And so when we look at these people, and people in my community are calling me, and they know that some of the homeless people on the street corners are suffering from substance abuse and mental illness. And then when I tell them that we are looking for ways to help those people, but then when this is the obstacle, and I will share with my community that this is the obstacle, it's a mislabeling of the felony offense, potentially. That's what's keeping them out of mental health treatment. I am going to point back to this day because I want the stakeholders to identify those crimes that we see as individuals every day happening. And our constituents don't know if it's a felony or a misdemeanor or a petty misdemeanor. They just know it's happening, and they want these people in treatment and off the streets so we don't see them under the bridges, in the parks, near schools, urinating on our children's public school facilities, and then having teachers come in the day after picking up drug needles and all of these things. We need to make sure that this issue gets resolved. And it's not just on you, Mr. Cook, and I'm sorry I'm not asking you a question, but this is also a comment to the prosecutor's office, to Mr. Koshiba and AMHD, because we need to figure this out. And I am so appreciative that the Honolulu Police Department is coming out in favor of this bill, because it means there is room for conversation, and we need to identify those misdemeanors and felonies that qualify. I do not want to see, I don't agree that negligent homicide necessarily belongs in the misdemeanors. Take that one off the table, but let's identify these now. So that's my charge to you folks. Any comments? That's my question, Mr. Cook. Any comments?
I mean, so perhaps rather than a blanket all misdemeanors, if we can enumerate which ones would qualify, that's reasonable.
Okay. Everyone's hearing that. So let's work on that as we move this bill forward. Members, any questions on this topic matter? Mr. Garcia, Ms. Takanouchi, Mr. Kobayashi, Mr. Kobayashi.
I think that in addition to enumerating, you might have a two category. That is a shall and a may. That is, you shall consider these for possible diversion. I mean, these offenses for possible diversion. And then in another category, you may consider these for possible diversion. I say that only because it seems that the public and legislators would get quite upset if, we see words like reckless endangering, sexual assault, terroristic threatening, etc. And these guys, you know, are being released. So anyway, that's comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
More direction. Okay, no one's going to get off the hook. Dr. Champion. I really appreciate that you've put in here that you will need additional funds for court-based clinicians, coordination, monitoring, and funding for contracted sites for additional evaluations and assessments. My understanding is that these people and the clientele that we're looking at, in some ways, are already being managed, monitored, coordinated through positions that already exist either in the judiciary or AMHD. So this is not for new positions, correct?
So thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to address this. I'm Michael Champion from the Department of Health and Medical Director for the Adult Mental Health Division. One critical component of providing off-ramps from the criminal justice system for those with mental illness includes identifying people who have these symptoms and coordinating connection with treatment in the community as an alternative. So one important position is a court-based clinician that's available to provide consultation liaison services to the judiciary in a given, court setting so that they can advise the decision makers on what's in front of them and what the options are in the community. So currently, we do have forensic coordinators, current positions, that are in the counties that cover a variety of activities, monitoring people who are on conditional release, providing some support in the court for these particular issues. There's just not, there's too many things that they're doing and not enough of them. So in the testimony, that's what it's referring to as an example, increasing the amount of court-based clinicians that are available. Currently, we're doing that in the First Circuit, but it's kind of, having a person do many different activities, and so they're just doing it part-time when they need to do it. This role is full-time or more.
Okay, so let me clarify the question further. When you say you need funding for contracted sites for additional evaluations and assessments, now, some of that is treatment programs in contracted sites. So those contracted sites already currently exist, or are you going to need additional?
We're assessing that now. Dr. Curtis, Administrator of the AMHD, and Deputy Director Marian Suji is assessing the exact number that's needed and the funding that's needed to support it. What's really very good about this bill is it has multiple different components. There are things related to assisted community treatment, expanding Act 26 and actualizing those off-ramps into treatment, and we're in the process of assessing that. But more generally in the testimony, it's referring to needing some more support, but we do know we need to get you some more specifics on that.
Okay, so I just want, to understand, we may very well need more monies for more mental health treatment, substance abuse beds, but some of this could be also things that are already contracted. And so I don't want to have an inflated number that we present that will also derail this.
Yes.
We need to be very upfront about what additional costs we might need, but also identify and acknowledge that we already currently contract for some of these services. And again, it may be through judiciary programs, it may be through AMHDH programs, I don't know where, it may be, it's there, because we know these people are cycling into programs and they fall in and out depending on where they may be in the lineup.
Yes, excellent point, and well taken. I'll bring that back to leadership. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Representative Kobayashi.
For DOH, I think you might also consider, as this bill moves on, that implementation dates be looked at. It looks like you need some time, perhaps, to set up new programs or additional programs, hire additional staff, etc. But then ideally, all of these would one implementation date, hopefully yesterday, but as quick
Yes.
as possible. But then
Understood.
there's another implementation date as to when the diversions can and should begin. Certainly, the diversions should not begin before you're able to serve these people. So maybe you might figure out some, twofold implementation
Yes.
with consultation.
Excellent point. So
Thank you.
staging dates and implementation stages. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Champion. Members, any other questions? Okay, the remaining bills actually all kind of relate back to this, so I'm hoping that we get some further clarifications on ACT and others as we move forward. So let's move to our next bill, House Bill 950, related to assisted community treatment orders. First up, we have support with comments from Dr. Fink, Department of Health.
Michael Chambers in the Department of Health, that's
Yeah.
Okay, support with comments from Institute for Human Services, Ms. Mitchell, on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair Bellotti. It's Connie Mitchell, Executive Director for IHS. We just noticed that there was another bill that this actually could be inserted into, so the possibility of combining. This one talks about, just extending the assisted community treatment on the repetitioning for up to 2 years, and we support that very strongly, given the fact that so many of the people that we serve really require a longer period of stabilization. But I did put in my testimony that it could be combined, with the other bill, which is HB 1155, which is about assisted community treatment as well. But that was just my suggestion, that, it could be combined with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Erdeshek, Hawaii Disability
Thank you.
Rights Center, support with comments.
Thank you. Yes, we have no objection. If the extra year is going to make a difference, I don't know whether the extra year is going to help or not, but the court still has discretion, so we have no objection to the bill.
Wonderful. Testimony in support, Ellen Godby Carson. We have late testimony from Mary Pat Waterhouse in support. Any other testifiers in the room? Any other testifiers via Zoom? Seeing none, members' questions? Seeing none, we're moving to House Bill 1122. This is again related to emergency hospitalizations. We have testimony in support with comments from Department of Health.
Michael Chambers from the Department of Health, stand on written testimony in support.
Testimony in support with comments, Ms. Mitchell.
Just wanted to stress that regarding the emergency guardianship, if it was to be expanded to cover a little bit more time, it would make it more possible for us to file the regular guardianship. So that's what we stand on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Erdeshek, comments, Hawaii Disability Rights Center.
Yes, we have no objection to an assessment. I mean, I think the concern that I expressed in my comments sort of dovetails with Connie's statements. I mean, as long as the person is not unlawfully detained while they're searching for a surrogate or a guardian, a lot of these people are brought in there on 48-hour holds and then they're stabilized and released. So a lot of them maybe could use guardians or surrogates or act orders or things like that. But as long as their rights are protected and they're not detained while that process plays out, then we think actually assessing them for all those things is a good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Erdeshek. Mr. Alan Johnson with Hina Malka, comments, or excuse me, in support. J.C. Mikulenik, comments via Zoom, Queens Health System.
Hi, Chair Pilati. Aloha. My name is Jenna Siatafu. I'm the Director of Behavioral Health for Queens Medical Center, and we stand on our testimony and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Michael Robinson, Hawaii Pacific Health, comments. Ms. Ellen Godby Carson, in support. Any late testimony? Seeing none. Any testifiers in the room? Any testifiers via Zoom? Seeing none. Members' questions? Because we have you, Mr. Mikulainik, I have a question. This adds what looks like would be another additional step in the emergency room. Is that a correct way to characterize this bill?
This is not an additional step. This is something that already occurs. If they're in the emergency room and need involuntary hospitalization, it is 48-hour wait period.
So are you now saying this is redundant? It's already in this process?
This is part of the process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to House Bill 1154. This is also, again, related to guardianship. We have testifying first, with comments, Department of Health.
Representative from the Department of Health, stand on written testimony with comments.
We have comments from Governor's Office, Mr. James Koshiba.
James Koshiba, Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness, will stand on written testimony with comments.
Thank you. Mr. Torres, Deputy Attorney General.
Good morning, Chair Bellotti and members of the committee. I'm Deputy Attorney General Erin Torres. We submitted testimony recommending amendments to this bill. First, we recommend that the amendment on page 1, lines 5 through 7, be deleted. Applying the U.S. Supreme Court's established requirements for due process to this amendment, reveals that it's subject to possible constitutional challenge. We also recommend that the amendment on page 3, lines 5 and 6 be deleted because it circumvents HRS sections 334-60.2, 334-121, and 334-161 regarding involuntary hospitalizations, assisted community treatment, and the administration of treatment over the patient's objection. These existing HRS sections contain clear standards that comply with the due process requirements set forth by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals as well as the Hawaii Supreme Court. In addition, the guardianship statute expressly states that a guardian shall not initiate the commitment of a ward to a mental health care institution except in accordance with the involuntary hospitalization statute. By analogy, a guardian should not be able to initiate assisted community treatment and the administration of involuntary medications for a ward except in accordance with those corresponding statutes. The department respectfully asks the committee to make the recommended amendments prior to passing this bill. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have comments from the judiciary.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Representative Kobayashi. I'm Matt Viola. I'm the Senior Family Court Judge. I'll stand on the written testimony, but I'll be available for questions if you have any.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge, for being here.
Yeah,
I know
my
it
pleasure.
takes you away from your court, so
Yeah,
thank you. Okay, we have next up Ms. Kent, Commission to Promote Uniform Laws in Opposition. Mr. Erdeshek. Oh, via Zoom. Go ahead, Ms. Kent.
Aloha. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony. I'm very sympathetic to the problem that I think this addresses, but this amendment to this uniform law is not the way to do it. I think our society is structured so that once we turn 18, we have the right to our own self-determination. That allows us to make decisions that others would think are bad ones, and that self-determination only gets taken away when we cross the line and there's judicial determination with due process and protections that we cannot make those decisions. And then there's a loss of liberty. With the language, especially in the first section, one could lose that self-determination simply by residing in a psychiatric facility, hospital, or homeless shelter. And as a uniform law commissioner, that change to this uniform law concerns me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Mr. Erdeshek, comments, Hawaii Disability Rights Center.
Thank you. Yes, the bill is a little confusing. I don't think the intent was to say that you would appoint a guardian simply because somebody is in a homeless shelter or a psychiatric facility. we read the bill and reading the testimony, it seemed like the intent was to clarify whether it would cover that situation. We thought current law does anyway. So to the extent that this clears it up, we have no objection to that. Regarding the consenting to the medication, I will happily defer to the Deputy Attorney General on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Erdeshek. Ms. Lindsay Ann Pacheco, Wahoo Lived Experience Council, in opposition. In support, Ms. Mitchell, Institute for Human Services via Zoom.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bellotti. I think the intent for that first section that people have objection to was not to say that if they were found in hospital, psychiatric facility, or homeless shelter, that they would then be given a guardian. I think the issue is that when somebody is hospitalized already and they are clearly in need of a guardian, when we approach Adult Protective Services, we have not had the support to move forward with that, because they believe that when the person is in the hospital, they're in a safe place. Similarly, when they're receiving services from our shelter, similar, status, is given to that person. So perhaps it doesn't need to be changing according to some of the folks that are in the room, whom I highly respect, but that is the reality that we deal with. The other part that I wanted to emphasize was that we wanted to really make clear that a guardian can authorize treatment over objection. That is the main thing, because we also hear from some guardians that they do not feel comfortable, and they don't feel like they have that authority to approve treatment even when it's clinically indicated and recommended by a psychiatrist. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Comments from the Queens Health System, Mr. Mikulinik?
If there are guardians that are interested in caring for the patient and resuming medication treatment or hospitalization, we're in support of that.
Good morning, this is Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
All right, thank you for calling back.
Individual, Ms. Ellen Godby Carson, in support. Okay. Seeing any other testifiers in the room? Any other testifiers in Zoom? Members' questions? Seeing none. Questions? Go ahead, Representative Kobayashi.
I don't understand how you switch from a emergency guardian to a regular guardian if necessary, and why there is a specific number of days, seemingly short to me, 90 days versus 120 days. I think,
Attorney General, question for the Attorney General.
I can try to answer that question. There's separate procedures within the guardianship statute that allow for the appointment of an emergency guardian versus the appointment of a regular guardian. So the intent, I think, is because it may take time, there are procedural processes, due process protections in place before the appointment of a full guardian. A full guardian would be able to make decisions about the care of a ward. If there's an emergency situation, that would create a situation where the respondent, the subject person, would be subject to harm in the time that it would take to get the full guardianship appointed. There's an emergency guardian that's supposed to be able to appoint it in that interim.
Extra 30 days from 90 days to 120 days is sufficient to make that so-called smooth transition from emergency guardian to a regular guardian. Is that it?
I will say...
because otherwise, why put a fairly short 30-day extension?
I think it depends on the circumstances of the case. The intent was to create a decision maker to serve in that period of time to address the specific emergency. So if you look at the emergency guardianship part of the statute, it does say the court is supposed to limit the powers of the emergency guardian because there's not a full hearing on it. It's supposed to limit those powers to address that emergency situation. So it's not supposed to be something that's going to last for a long time, because that would be where we would switch instead to a full guardianship.
Okay. And Judge Viola agree that the extension of 30 days allows fully to...
Representative Corbiash, what I would say is, I haven't taken a position, the judiciary hasn't taken a position on that extension. I'm not sure the specific reason why. What I would say is, typically we can have a hearing and make orders on a petition for a quote-unquote regular guardianship within the 90-day period right now.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Judge Viola, actually, can you stay there? I think this is really interesting because it's illuminating potentially a problem that maybe only you can answer and maybe not attorneys who are kind of in the adversarial position. When folks are coming in for guardianships and it's an emergency situation, would you say that sometimes in a situation, say someone's in emergency hospitalization, it might be like adult onset schizophrenia that didn't present itself when the person was a child, so a guardianship could not be placed at that time. So this is what covers that positioning and then allows for further time for a full guardianship. Is that, in your experience, what you've seen in the courts?
Yes, it is usually an emergent situation where, and the statute says right now, if the intent is to not have an emergency guardianship and that's it, I think the intent is to address the emergent situation, but then proceed with a full guardianship, because some of the findings we have to make are the same. It's just that the delay in proceeding through the normal process may result in substantial harm to the individual if it's delayed. So I don't think it's supposed to, it's necessarily, I haven't seen too many situations where it's a standalone emergency guardianship.
Can you speak to other guardianships you've seen? And I'm assuming it's in family court. When, say, there's a family support system around someone who they know has mental illness or a mental condition or a disorder, do those guardianships that get put in place assist that individual moving forward into life because they might later on have some kind of breakdown or psychotic break or some kind of situation?
There are a variety of reasons why someone will be deemed incapacitated and can't make those decisions about themselves, have to have a surrogate or a guardian make those decisions. And many times it could be a psychiatric illness, it could be it could be dementia or Alzheimer's. You know, we do guardianships for minors as well. We some sort of psychotic episode. There's kind of a range. I think the fundamental determinations have to be that that person cannot make those sort of decisions for themselves. And I would add that not every guardianship is a full guardianship. We do have the authority to limit the powers of a guardian, but sort of the statutory power, the powers of the guardian are laid out in our statute already.
I think this is important because I remember, and Ms. Mitchell will remember this, when we were first passing the laws for the ACT law, just in general, it was many family members who were coming forward and asking for ACT, and we've cycled around, because it hasn't been an effective program, for these families who are trying to get these orders in place before the child turned into an adult. And so this is a very interesting conversation, I would just say. But it illuminates some of the needs for the improvements in the ACT law. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Members, any other questions? All right, moving on to our next one. We have 1155, again, another ACT bill. Opposition with comments from Dr. Fink, Department of Health. Thank you. Mr. Viola, Judge Viola, comments from the judiciary.
Again, good morning, and I'll submit on my written testimony to be available for questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Erdeshek, support with comments, Hawaii Disability Rights Center.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think this is actually a really good idea. I think if you want to, we've had so many bills to try to improve the ACT program, and I think a lot of them don't really get to the heart of the problem, which is that most people who want to file petitions don't know how to navigate the court process. And so I think that if you got the health department and the attorney general to file these petitions, it would streamline it, it would help a lot of these families, it would really improve the system. I'm not sure why they don't want to do it, except maybe they just don't want to do it, but quite frankly, I think this is an excellent idea.
All right, thank you, Mr. Erdeshek. Ms. Mitchell, Institute for Human Services in support.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate that I think we support this consolidation of information about the people who are on these act orders, and also the use of the long-acting injectables, to just make it a lot safer for people, and when they hit the emergency departments, so that they have access to data that would help make treatment decisions. When somebody's on a long-acting injectable, it lasts anywhere from 30 days to 90 days. So it's important for someone who's entering into a hospital, for the people who are treating that person, to understand that that person is already treated to some degree. I think the idea of asking the Department of Health, to assist with petitioning for ACT could be done not directly through the AG's office, although that was, what we had hoped, that would happen. It can also be done through contracting out, of other attorneys to help if that was easier to implement. So I just want to mention that it's just a way of expanding our ability, to be able to do ACT and do it more successfully. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Ellen Godby Carson in support. Any other, we have testimony from Mariah Grams in support and Raylan Reno Yeomans in opposition. Any other testifiers in the room? Any other testifiers via Zoom? Seeing none, members' questions. Representative Kobayashi.
For DOH, would your problems or your opinion be changed if we change the word shall to may? That is page 2, I guess there are 2 shells on page 2, line 16 and line 18. I think the problem that you have is that if it says shall file petition within X number of days, who knows what the next committee will say, 2 days or 30 days or 90 days. And I can see that that would burden the Department of Health enormously. So would changing shall to may help?
Thank you very much. Michael Champion for the Department of Health. Perhaps I should give a little bit of information to clarify the department's testimony. The department supports the use of assisted community treatment, and there are a number of things in this bill that the department supports in terms of streamlining the process, having expedited hearings and finalizing orders, the use of online hearings, having a mechanism where if there's a stipulated order process in the court, very, very helpful to streamline the process. This issue of who is submitting the petition goes to the heart of understanding how the ACT process works. So let me just speak about that quickly. There are multiple components of the process involved in getting an assisted community treatment order. The first is for a psychiatrist or an APRN or X to examine somebody and certify that the individual meets criteria for ACT. That's the first thing. So that's got to happen someplace, in some setting, through some process. The second part, and it's outlined very well in statute, is submitting a petition to the court. But there's multiple parts of submitting the petition. There is submitting the petition, but what's included in that is having a psychiatrist testify in court about the treatment plan, written treatment plan, that will also be submitted to the court as part of that petition, and also designating and identifying a community mental health program that's going to administer the ACT. So the department's position is that the provider who's going to be providing the care in the community in the designated mental health program that developed the treatment plan, that will implement the treatment plan in the community, is the best entity or the best person to do that, because they have access to information. In addition, they will use that treatment plan to implement it in the community and the department's position is that there will be better continuity from the petition to granting the order to implementing the community if the provider is doing that piece.
I'll give you one other thing to consider. On page 5, line 8, there's the words "shall endeavor to file." And that might be a softer version of what currently exists, "shall file."
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Any other questions or comments, or questions? I have a question for Ms. Mitchell.
Yes.
So, in your verbal testimony, is the problem that you need assistance with the legal aspects of filing these ACT orders? When you say you hope the AG's office would do it?
I think what we have learned in other states is that a lot of the time it is the state that brings these forward and does the petitions. We're not totally relying on this, but we have one attorney that works with me, and we're planning to do training actually this month to about 5 more attorneys. But we really want to make it more available to people. And it's more about if the Adult Mental Health Division or the Department of Health were to be the centralized database of this, that's what I would like to see the most, is that they really know who is being petitioned for and that they can facilitate the access to the information. We have had a difficult time accessing information when we have, wanted to get the information from, say, hospitals, say we need a consent to release information, but the person, the subject of the petition, doesn't have capacity to actually sign those consents, and so it's a real conundrum.
Okay, so back it up a little. You said, is it in other states, the states file the petitions?
Often, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, moving to House Bill 1156. We have, this one is more specifically related to long-acting psychiatric medication members. We have opposition with comments from the State Department of Health. Okay, thank you. Comments from Judge Viola.
Good morning again, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. I pretty much stand on my written testimony. I want to try to clarify one thing. I'm not sure if it came through in the testimony, the written testimonies, that our concerns about the proposed amendments to Section 33459B are this. That portion of the statute addresses transportation of individuals who may need an examination for emergency hospitalization, and then a process for an assessment and maybe emergency hospitalization. Not everybody who gets sent to the hospital for an emergency examination is admitted under 359 or 33459B. If an individual is assessed as not meeting the criteria for involuntary hospitalization, they are to be discharged either back into custody of a law enforcement officer or to the community. And I guess our concern is that if this language may be read to require the Director of Health to file standalone petitions for orders to treat for individuals who have already been released into the community, and I would suggest that the consideration be given to whether assisted community treatment order would be the more appropriate vehicle, because the statute already requires an examiner who determines that the criteria for involuntary hospitalization have not been met, to also do an assessment at that point for whether the criteria for assisted community treatment are met. And I'll
Thank you,
stand ready
Judge.
to answer questions if you have.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Erdeshek, support with comments.
No, I think we're in opposition, Chair, I believe.
I'm sorry, 1156?
This is 1156?
Yep.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, you are
Thank
in
you.
opposition. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, thank you. No, we have real problems with this bill. I've been meeting with Connie and Alan Carson and Maria and a lot of other stakeholders to try to come to some consensus on ways to improve the ACT system. And as you see, I've been supportive of most of those efforts, but this bill is really problematic. In particular, the use of the administrative panels. I think as lawyers, we're sort of used to the fact that these are judicial proceedings that you have to go through. The administrative panel exists in current law in a very rare situation. At the state hospital, they are allowed to convene these administrative panels of like 3 doctors in order to get an order to treat. But anywhere else, you have to go to court to get an order to treat. And in particular, this bill would expand it to people that are just brought in on an MH1 off the street. So somebody's in the street, a police officer sees him, calls the police psychologist on the phone, and the psychologist says, okay, yeah, take him over to the ER at Queens. So they bring the guy to Queens and on a 48-hour hold, and somehow in that time, you're gonna involuntarily medicate the person and you're gonna convene a panel in 48 hours. There's simply no time to do it. And I think based on my conversations with the Attorney General's office, it's probably illegal and unconstitutional. I mean, we're sympathetic to the problem of the revolving door. Nobody knows that as well as I do, because we see a lot of these clients in our office. So it is unfortunate that they're stabilized and then released. And so we need to do something about that. But these panels I don't think are constitutional in this situation. And the way this bill is proposed, we think it's completely illegal. So we don't think this bill should really move further along.
Thank you, Mr. Erdeshek. Now for the direct opposite testimony in support, Ms. Mitchell from IHS.
Yeah.
So I think that, if I could actually call upon Dr. Champion to describe the administrative panel, because it isn't like, people just deciding, getting a bunch of people together to just say, yes, why don't you just give them the medication. So I agree, it does take a little bit more time, and in conversation with Dr. Champion, I realize that you can't do it in the 48 hours, but I think that, if there were ways, to extend the person's stay, for a little bit longer, or if the person did meet criteria for civil commitment, then there is time for that to happen. But we also had wanted to advocate for, if somebody is granted civil commitment, that the civil commitment would come with an order to treat. So I just want to put that out there because I need to jump off.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Mikulinek?
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. We'll stand on our written testimony and certainly appreciate the comments that have been made by Mr. Erdeshek and Connie on this bill. It's a complex issue and we certainly appreciate the intent. We'll just note that some of the timeframes and need to be worked out, and a little bit more clarity around what expeditiously works out as needs to be clarified. So some problems with the bill, but we're certainly here to work with our partners on this critical issue. So mahalo.
Thank you. Ms. Ellen Godby-Carson in support. Ms. Raylan Reno-Yeomans in opposition. Ms. Mary Pat Waterhouse in support. Any other testifiers in the room? Any other testifiers on Zoom? Seeing none, members, questions? Seeing none, members, moving to House Bill 948, moving out of the ACT world. Ready for that? All right. We have support with comments from Hawaii State Department of Health.
Hi, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. I'm Dr. Janelle Hernandez-Armstrong, Chief Psychologist for Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division, Department of Health. I appreciate the opportunity to testify remotely and represent the department from a neighbor island in support of HB 948. As my written testimony describes, crisis mobile outreach response for youth more than doubled from 2020 to 2022. This significant increase alone speaks to the need for additional supports for mental health crisis for youth across the state. Increased crisis calls result in other pressures to our already overtaxed system. Our acute psychiatric facilities are unable to accept youth quickly enough to get them out of emergency rooms in a timely manner. resulting in youth spending days and often weeks in emergency departments. Emergency departments do not have the resources or training to address the psychological needs of youth in crisis. This pilot project to increase supports available to youth will allow for up to 8 weeks of stabilization services. Currently, youth receive 24 hours of follow-up, which does not allow for youth and families to connect to needed resources in the community. 8 weeks of stabilization can help families to find resources and get mental health services started. In other states, this model of crisis response has proven to reduce out-of-home placements such as residential treatment and foster care, and has reduced the use of emergency resources and related costs. The numbers are clear. Youth are literally calling out for help. This bill is an effort to heed that call and provide needed support to youth in crisis. Our strained system cannot tolerate more. Our children deserve to be provided with the resources they need. Please pass this bill to meet the needs of youth in our community that are in crisis. And I'm available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Judith Clark from Hawaii Youth Services Network in support via Zoom.
Aloha Chair, members of the committee. I am Judith Clark, Executive Director of Hawaii Youth Services Network, and we are in strong support of this bill. We have coordinated a statewide homeless youth partnership since 1981. Outreach services are a critical part of the services that need to be provided to homeless youth. In November of 2021, Oahu began providing services to these youth through a mobile crisis outreach bus, which has enabled youth in rural areas of the island to have increased access to services, resources, and essential survival supplies. Homeless youth who participated in a needs survey and focus groups in 2019 identified drop-in centers and mobile outreach van services as important unmet needs that they would like to see. Service providers convened by my organization in 2017 recommended establishing drop-in centers on the neighbor islands. There are currently no drop-in centers or mobile outreach vans targeting youth and young adults on the neighbor islands, although street-based outreach is funded to a limited extent through our federal street outreach program grant. This is important because homeless youth are the most vulnerable segment of our homeless population. They are children who have not yet completed their educations, lack employment skills and experience, and have not yet learned all the skills needed for adult living. Increasing the safety of our vulnerable youth while on the streets and helping them move into safe and appropriate living situations should be a top priority for our state. We strongly urge passage of this bill and pledge to support the pilot project if funded. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Catholic Charities, Shelley Niles in support. Residential Youth Services and Empowerment, Carla Hauser in support. Marcia Branca in support. Melody Kilcommons in support. Any other testifiers in the room? Any other testifiers in Zoom? Seeing none, members' questions? Representative Kobayashi?
For the sake of Department of Health, I would suggest that language be added somewhat to this effect. Pilot program shall provide, to the extent practicable within available resources, the following services. What a great list of services, but if the word shall is there, I'm afraid someone will immediately file suit because they won't be able to provide that wonderful array of services.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Representative Kobayashi. Any other questions? Okay, if you have late testimony for this bill, we have someone indicating they have legal testimony. Come forward. If you could say your name and then provide written testimony to the committee clerk.
Thank you so much, Chair. Angela, providing testimony in strong support on behalf of CARES. There is a need for mental health crisis intervention for at-risk youths and children. Providing mental health resources, training, trauma-informed care can address harm and provide support for youth and their families. The purpose of this act is to create a pilot program and to appropriate funds for a crisis mobile outreach team on Oahu. We can see a lot of support for this sort of model of transformative approach to address mental health and behavioral health here in Honolulu and also on the mainland. So CORE, Crisis Outreach Response Engagement, here from the city's Department of Emergency Services is modeled after STAR, Support Team Assisted Response, which is implemented through Denver's Office of Behavioral Health Strategies. So I'm just going to go into a little bit about the model just to point out why the need is necessary here. So the Denver office was created to ensure the city's mental health needs were being addressed in an innovative, efficient, and effective manner. And that team connects the key agencies in the city's efforts towards mental health well-being and helps organizations working together to strategize solutions. And
if you could wrap it up.
Oh, okay.
And then you can submit it as written testimony.
Okay. And the result was a better support system for the city's mental health needs, which reduced the strain on critical state and city resources, removed barriers to access, and addressed inadequacies and promoted equity within the healthcare system while strengthening the network of resources, service providers, and mental health resources. So youths will benefit from these extra resources. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, moving to the next bill, House Bill 907. This is related to telehealth. Members, this is the bill I'm moving. I know that there's other bills that have been introduced. First up, we have the Department of Human Services, Ms. Kathy Betts or her designee.
On behalf of the Department of Human Services, we stand a written testimony offering comments as well as proposing amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. We have comments. Okay. From Insurance Division. Thank you. We have also, in support, University of Hawaii JAPSOM, Dr. Lee Boinkunteolam. Eric Abe, Hawaii Primary Care Association in person.
Hi, Eric Abe, Hawaii Primary Care Association. We're in strong support of this bill. I'll be brief. We successfully reached out to HMSA and have engaged in constructive discussions that are ongoing. It is our hope that these discussions will result in an outcome that will be agreeable to all. For that, we thank HMSA for working with us and commend them for their efforts in this regard. For that reason, we, for purposes of facilitating continued discussion, the HPCA respectfully urges the committee to pass this bill out. Thanks.
Thank you. National Association of Social Workers Hawaii Chapter. Ms. Gardner here for Sonia Bigalki-Banen.
Aloha, Chair Albalati, Vice Chair Takenuchi, members of the Health and Homelessness Committee. Becky Gardner on behalf of the National Association of Social Workers Hawaii Chapter. I just wanted to thank this committee for hearing this bill. It goes very far and does very well to meet patients where they are. And this is respect to access. Obviously, there's a lot of areas within the state that the AV equipment can't reach, remote areas, kupuna, who don't like to, may have trouble with the Zooms. And then also utilization. A lot of patients perhaps prefer to use the phone over AV. So this will help encourage patients to continue with their treatment, conclude their treatment, and ultimately end in better clinical outcomes. I just wanted to highlight why this bill is really effective at addressing these needs is because it pins the provision of audio-only telehealth on the definition as it is outlined by the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Studies. And I just want to highlight the relevant language. For services furnished for the purposes of diagnosis, evaluation, or treatment of mental health disorders to a patient in their home, interactive telecommunications may include two-way, real-time, audio-only communication technology if the distant site physician or practitioner is technically capable of using that interactive telecommunication systems, but the patient is not capable of or does not consent to the use of video technology. So we think that wherever the feds go, Hawaii State does well by following. And I want to note that there are a lot of robust efforts at the federal level to refine the definition of telecommunications, interactive telecommunication systems. In fact, when I looked at the FDR, there was recent amendments from the 25th of January, and which was different from the 13th. So I think with all this movement on the feds, we do well by just kind of following what they're doing. We're also available and ready to discuss any kind of iterations or amendments. We're very much focused on access and utilization, so we're here for questions if you need. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex Lichten of the Hawaii Psychological Association.
Good morning again. It's nice to be here in person. HPA is in very strong support of House Bill 907 because it would increase access to services by requiring insurance reimbursement for audio-only mental health session to be on par with video and in-person sessions. When this issue first came up about 2 years ago, my first reaction, as many of you may think, is what's wrong with requiring some in-person visits? Isn't it better to have therapy in person? Well, the literature, the research doesn't necessarily show that, but I learned quickly from our membership, psychologists telling us, hey, we've got some very vulnerable patients, particularly seniors, people in rural communities, people of lower income, who disproportionately rely on the telephone for their mental health services. And I'll give you 2 examples of vulnerable patients. One is a person with multiple medical conditions would have to travel on the bus with an oxygen tank and a lot of other medical equipment. Takes them an hour to leave the house to get on the bus, and once the bus drops them off, another half hour just to make it up to the psychologist's office. Another person with social phobia was so ashamed of their physical appearance, they didn't want the therapist to see them on video or in person, wouldn't do anything else other than the telephone. So any restrictions on the use of the telephone will result in some people dropping out of treatment. And there must be at least hundreds of such people, and that means bad outcomes. But the bottom line for me is, shouldn't that choice be left to the provider and the client to decide what is in the best individual needs of that client, rather than having the insurance companies or the government decide that? Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Lichten. We have testimony and support from Alzheimer's Association, Ron Shimabuku. Testimony and support from Hawaii Disability Rights Center.
Yes, we're in strong support. I agree with Alex. I think that this has been a lifeline for a lot of people in a rural area. To me, this should be a pretty easy to address. So we strongly support the bill.
Thank you. Testimony and support, American Cancer Society, Cancer Action Network, Cynthia Au. Hawaiian Islands Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, Becky Gardner.
Good morning again. I want to introduce myself. I just wanted to highlight from the testimony that we submitted, the Department of Health and Human Services did conduct some research very recently during the pandemic, and they conclusively determined that the telephonic service is critical to improving access for several vulnerable groups, which include the elderly, low income, mobility challenged, limited English proficient, and rural residents. And we all know that these are groups that are very much present and in need in Hawaii. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Elizabeth England, Hawaii Medical Association. AARP Hawaii? Audrey?
Good morning, Chair Baladi, members of the committee. I'm Audrey Suga-Nakagawa, Advocacy Director for AARP Hawaii. AARP stands in strong support of this measure, and what can I say? The previous testifiers really pretty much took everything I would want to say, but of course you can, and as you can imagine, telehealth has become a very important and vital tool for accessing healthcare, especially for a kapuna. And yes, while more and more seniors are becoming tech savvy and are using the mobile devices and other type of technology, still many prefer to use telephone in communications. And partly it's because sometimes the connectivity is unstable. Even in urban Honolulu, I have sometimes problems connecting from Maunalua Valley. But, you can imagine that it might be even worse for other areas of their islands, neighbor islands, and rural areas. And so, having this audio only as part of the telecommunication modality is very, very important. So really appreciate having this recognized in this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. ATA Action, Kyle Zedley in support. Comments, HMSA?
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity. I will be brief as well. As you all know, HMSA has been a very early supporter of telehealth efforts and actually has an online platform for the past 12 years that's been provided to both providers as well as our members at no cost to them. So we are in strong support of telehealth services. We are not in support of the bill as currently drafted, but as Mr. Abe mentioned, we are working with HPCA on a compromise. We just don't believe that telephone visits are equal to face-to-face visits, and we don't believe as a result they should be paid equally or at parity. But we are supportive of ensuring that there is access, particularly on the rural islands. CMS only allowed for this to occur as a result of the pandemic. So there is a sunset relative to CMS at the end of 2024. So we would like to request that that sunset be included in this measure, and we will continue to work with HPCA, hopefully by the time of decision making, if not today, prior to the next committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dieseman. Members, there's numerous individuals who've testified, mostly in support, one with comments. Any late testifiers here in the room would like to comment? We have late testimony from HPH in support. Any testifiers on Zoom? Members, any questions? Director Peterson, Maura Peterson, can I ask a question? I just want to clarify. So the definition that you're proposing to ensure kind of parity with the statute, or is that subject to the 2024 sunset date for CMS?
Currently, yes.
It is.
It's the same. I mean, the law itself, the proposal says as amended by or as defined by that particular statute. And all we're saying is it should be the whole statute and not just at least the audio only portion of it should be subject to the whole Medicare rules that are included along with that definition.
Okay, I get that, I understand that, but is it subject
Yes.
to the 2024 sunset?
Correct.
So Medicare.
I mean, the whole definition is subject to that.
Okay, so Medicare even nationally still hasn't like finalized rules?
That is correct.
Or standards or practice?
Well, these are the finalized, they're the finalized rules, but they are subject to sunset.
Okay. So it is safe to say that telehealth is still kind of in flux across the nation?
At the national level, correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? I prompted a question, oh no, no, just kidding.
For HMSA, I would suppose that if there is currently no good data to show the comparability between in-person and telecommunications, that there will not be such research completed prior to December 31st, 2024.
Well, I mean, we're hopeful there will be, right? Because, like I said, during the pandemic, telehealth really picked up considerably, in
Of
all
course.
honesty. I mean, and for us right now, still on our platforms and for individual providers' platforms, the bulk of the services being done in Hawaii via telehealth are still mental health services. So we're a big supporter of it. There's just some verbal cues and body language and seeing a person's environment, particularly for mental health issues, that we
I
want to
understand that.
preserve.
But I'm trying to ask, research of this type is not done quickly. And in terms of the December 31st, 2024, that's relatively quickly, given how research is done. So,
No, it's a great question. I think CMS, that is the deadline they've proposed today. They could extend it, or there may be additional information that happens over the course of the next year and a half, and from the past as well during the pandemic.
okay.
But that is the deadline for CMS now.
So we'll wait till next year. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. No other questions? Members, our last bill. House Bill 965. First up, comments from Insurance Division. Okay, Mr. Mizuno, Hawaii Employer Union Health Benefits Trust Fund, and thank you for staying here for this hearing.
Welcome.
Testify
Good morning,
in one
Chair
bill.
Bellotti and Vice Chair Takenuichi and members of the committee. Derek Mizuno, ETF. I just wanted to clarify or just ask maybe a question or for clarification on the intent of the bill, whether it's to limit the criteria to what's in here, or could we add on criteria that we already have, like the weight loss program requirement that we have now. So that's kind of a question. But I'm available for questions from.
Okay, so your testimony is a question to the committee. Okay, yes, we got it. Thank you. Mr. Kirimitsu, comments? Via Zoom?
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. John Kierman, Supervisor. We'll stand on our testimony providing comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other testifiers? Seeing none. Any other testifiers in Zoom? Seeing none. Members, questions? Seeing none. We are going to recess, and we will be reconvening at 11:30 a.m. for decision-making on our 8:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. agendas. Reconvening our 8:30 a.m. Health and Homelessness hearing for February 3rd. We are taking up decision-making. First up on House Bill 1300. This is relating to mental health. Members, my recommendation is to add a defective date of June 30th, 3000, also including a delayed implementation date of July 1st, 2024, and then adding general fund appropriations pursuant to the DCCA's testimony, and any technical amendments offered by HMSO for clarity purposes. Members, any comments, questions, or concerns? Yes.
A separation clause, perhaps, if the title is defective.
A severability clause?
Severability.
Severability clause, okay, we'll add that as well. Members, any other comments, questions, or concerns? All right, seeing none. Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 1300, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Motto is excused and will be noted as excused for the rest of the bills on this agenda. Representative Iligan?
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi?
Aye.
Representative Mizuno?
Aye.
Representative Nishimoto?
Aye.
Representative Garcia?
Aye.
Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. House Bill 1451 relating to advanced practice registered nurse, technical amendments pursuant to HMSO, and a defective date of June 30th, 3000. Members, any comments, questions, or concerns?
I'd like to go WR. I believe that progress should have been made, but it seems we're stuck where we were 4 years ago.
This is 1451 on APRNs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Still reservations?
I'm sorry. No reservations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 1451, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Members, House Bill 1221 relating to pharmacists. Members, I'm going to defect the date to June 30th, 3000. Any technical amendments for clarity proposed by HMSO? Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1221, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Any members voting with reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair's recommendation is adopted.
Members, House Bill 955, I'm going to take the weekend to review all of the testimony and propose amendments for Wednesday, our decision-making agenda for 11:30 a.m. Moving on to House Bill 485 relating to marriage. Members, I'm going to take the recommendations of amendments from Department of Health, defect the date till June 30th, 3000, and any technical amendments by HMSO. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 485, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations? Any noes?
No.
No vote for Rep. Garcia. All others voting aye, Chair recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Members, House Bill 855. I'm going to keep this measure moving along. But like to insert a defective date of June 30th, 3000, and any technical amendments by HMSO. Members, any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 855, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair recommendation is adopted.
Members, okay, we are done with this agenda. Adjourning, convening our 9:30 a.m. agenda for decision-making for the Committee on Health and Human and Homelessness. Members, up first, House Bill 1404 and House Bill 1442. Members, I'm going to defer both of these measures until our decision-making agenda for Wednesday, 11:30. We had quite a bit of testimony, and so we will take this weekend to look over over that testimony. We will do the same with measures House Bill 950, House Bill 1122, House Bill 1154, House Bill 1155, and House Bill 1156 for decision-making on Wednesday of next week at 11:30 a.m. Members, for House Bill 948, I'm going to recommend an HD1, inserting the amendments raised by Representative Kobayashi in our hearing within available services, and a defective date of June 30th, 3000, and any technical amendments by HMSO. Members, questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair, for the vote.
Voting on HB 948, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair, recommendations adopted.
Members, for House Bill 907, Chair's recommendation is to take the amendments of Department of Human Services, HMSO amendments, technical amendments for clarity, a defective date of June 30th, 3000, and that is it. Questions, comments, or concerns?
What about the amendments from DCCA, Insurance Commissioner?
Let's pick up just the amendments from Department of Human Services, as that might address some of those, and we'll let the future committees take a look at those
Okay.
amendments. Okay.
CPC, yeah.
Sorry, CPC, yes. Members, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair, for the vote.
Voting on HB 907, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Any reservations? Any noes? Seeing none, Chair, recommendations adopted.
And members, for House Bill 965, I will note, I believe there is a Senate companion bill, because the testimony was sparse on this at the moment, and it does maybe add another benefit, essential health benefit that would affect insurance. My recommendation is to defer, and if the Senate decides to move it over, we'll hear it at that point. Okay, seeing no comments, questions, or concerns, members, we are adjourned. We will see you tomorrow for a hearing if you are going to be attending, but members, I will not be holding decision-making on any of those bills for tomorrow. Those will also be pushed to Wednesday.
And Chair, it's 329 at 9:30 a.m. Saturday.
9:30 a.m., yes.
Got it.
Thank you.